this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapsed.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey there, I'm Jess.
Milady Confetti here.
Hi, I'm Psyche.
And I'm Hey Shady Lady.
And welcome to Boss Level,
a podcast where we feature conversations with guests who have leveled up, bringing an XP boost to the table.
We pick the brains of professionals, creators, and bosses in industries across the globe to help our listeners achieve their own boss level.
We are not just creating a podcast, but a gamified and engaged community.
Listen to Boss Level on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's Bobbi Brown. You might know me as the makeup artist, beauty expert, but today I'm here with a brand new podcast, The Important Things. On this new podcast, I'll be joined by my co-host and dear friend, international best-selling author, Anjali Kumar.
Each week, Bobbi and I are looking for ways we can all learn to live more authentic, gratifying lives. You can look forward to learning from our amazing guests, including the incomparable Gloria Steinem, charity founder Christy Turlington Burns, and many, many more. Listen to The Important Things starting on March 3rd on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Mama, what does the chicken say? Dog. Cat. Giraffe.
Giraffe, really?
Giraffe. You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right.
Visit NHTSA.gov/the right seat.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions. Hey everybody, Robert Evans here along with Garrison and Chris. We are preempting the episode that will be airing after this because of events that happened in Portland, Oregon this weekend. On Saturday the 19th, there was a weekly racial justice march. The march, again, it's occurred every week for a couple of years now. It is ostensibly led by the mother of Patrick Kimmons, who is a young black Portland man who was killed by the police a couple of years ago. This is a regular thing as a general rule. You'll see a lot of folks on the right talking about this march as like an Antifa gathering. This almost never gets any coverage whatsoever because as a general rule, it's just a march where people, protest police violence. It's not something that tends to draw much attention, even within Portland. This Saturday, a person who lived in the neighborhood where people were assembling for the march left their home, confronted a group of women who were acting as corkers. Corking is a job at protests. It's a traffic safety thing. It's people on a mix of usually bikes, motorcycles, scooters. Every now and then you see like a one wheel. And their job is to kind of route traffic around the march in order to keep people from getting hit by cars. It is a safety thing. These folks were confronted by this person. Reports on the ground that have been covered in local news from people who were there say that he started out yelling at them, calling them terrorists, and according to one person who was on the scene within about 90 seconds, began firing. He hit and killed one woman, and he wounded 4 others, and he himself was shot by a protester who was nearby, who was, to everything we know so far, legally open carrying a rifle. He is the shooter, is in critical condition in the hospital. One of the people who was doing traffic security that night is dead. I believe at least one is still in the hospital. The others have been released. That's the actual, those are the facts of the situation as they're known. The protester who returned fire quickly afterwards turned themselves and their rifle into the police. The police did the stuff that they do in these instances and then released the person who had responded defensively to the shooting. And that's where we are right now. Portland police have been very cagey in saying anything about this. They have framed it as a clash between a homeowner and protesters. One thing we can say based on where this person came out of, it does not appear that they were a homeowner. It looks like they left would have been like a rental thing. Not that that particularly matters, but it's interesting the framing that the police are choosing to use here. And yeah, there's fairly little information as of right now. The name of the shooter has not been released by the police. Neither has the name of the protester who responded to the gunfire. But we do know, a number of the people who were hit. We know the person who is deceased. Avoid kind of spreading anything more specific than that until there's evidence. There's not yet video of this, although one of the people who was there says they have a GoPro that was taken by the police that may have something. I don't know the extent to which we will get that information. Again, the police have been acting to kind of make this look like a clash rather than what the evidence that like reporters at OPB and the Portland Mercury and even the Times have found, the interviews they've conducted. It seems fair to say that this was a mass shooting that was stopped by a protester as opposed to what I would call a clash.
Yes.
But it's obvious Portland police aren't going to want that narrative to come out. Very tellingly, the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, issued a statement where he talked about the shooting as a piece of the city's ongoing gun crime, did not mention the woman who was killed, did not mention the injured, but expressed his sympathy with the police for being so tired. So, that's Portland. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty sick. And you shouldn't it's not dismissing it by saying it's Portland and saying this is
no.
There's been growing rhetoric from the city and people the past few years that have basically been encouraging something like this to happen. And now that it has, it is also pretty sick looking at different media framing and police framing, talking about it's a homeowner and how it was it was a clash, not an outright attack on people. Yeah, so it's
bad.
It's pretty gross, but what we can do right now is support the people who were there. The GoFundMe for medical expenses and mental health effects in the next bit.
Some of the wounded were themselves plugging up the bullet holes of other wounded while they had also been shot, because it was a lot of the people doubled as medics or had some sort of medical training. There were medics who were like threatened by police when they arrived on scene for not being willing to stop providing pressure to a gunshot wound. Like a bunch of ugly stuff happened. There's a mix of ugly stuff and like stuff that seems ugly but is pretty normal. Like the ambulance did not move in immediately, which obviously people on scene were very angry about. That is standard everywhere for like ambulances at active shootings, and it's just I mean, it's not pleasant, but it's also like they're not ever acting from as much information as the people who were there maybe have. I'm not gonna blame EMTs or whatnot for following SOP in this situation. I will blame the police for their responses to stuff like this, obviously, and the fact that it's unlikely that a satisfying police investigation will be conducted. That said, it does seem like we already, based on the early reporting that exists from, again, a number of different news organizations, a number of different local journalists, that we have a pretty good idea of the basics of what happened. Obviously, more will come out in addition to, nothing but respect to the medics who responded. I think it's worth acknowledging that the protester who shot the shooter seems to have, from the evidence we have, handled themselves as close to perfectly as you can in a defensive shooting. They stopped the threat. They went to the police. They turned in the rifle. They did not. And there's a number of reasons for this, including the fact that, like, the last time there was a shooting that was involved a left-wing demonstrator, that person was hunted down and killed by U.S. Marshals. Yeah. But it also, I think, helps when it comes to the legal stuff that's going to wash out on this, the investigation. It really helps that this person dotted their I's and crossed their T's to make it very clear that this was a very legal self-defense situation. Obviously, I think a lot of the folks who participate in these things don't particularly care about the law one way or the other. But in terms of how other people see what has happened and what the fallout to this is, and maybe the degree to which people properly put some blame on the city for this, I think it is helpful that the person who responded with their rifle to this shooting conducted themselves so carefully. So, I mean, I have a lot of respect for everybody on the ground. A lot of hard decisions had to be made, and it seems like in the worst case scenario situation, the people who were on the ground handled themselves with a tremendous amount of thoughtfulness and courage. I think that's everything.
Yeah, I don't think there's not much else to say at this moment right now.
Stay safe, be careful.
And again, the GoFundMe, just type GoFundMe Stand with Portland into Google. It will take you to the GoFundMe, and you can help folks out there.
Hello, welcome to It Could Happen Here. I'm Garrison, and today we're talking about two of my favorite things, which is unions and coffee. Joining me as usual is Chris and Sophie.
Hi.
What do you guys think about coffee and unions and the combination thereof?
Big on unions, like that, like making them, like having them. Not big on coffee. It's too bitter. I can't do it.
Unbelievable.
Unions great, coffee great, Chris bad.
Chris gets the wall. That's
oh no! It's the ultimate canceling.
That is
canceling's gotten more intense.
We are coming down on the coffee issue.
Yeah, don't ever tell Prop that. Don't ever tell Prop you don't like coffee. I worry for you.
And anyway, to join us to discuss coffee and unions is a union organizer and also someone with a podcast, so that's fun. But Kaylee Schuler, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. You know what they say about unionized coffee? Tastes better.
It tastes better. That's that is what I've heard.
Much better quality.
That is true. Maybe that's the problem that Chris has been having.
None of your
there are no unions here.
Yeah. See.
That's the thing. Chris jumped to conclusions, but you failed to consider the coffee question. Anyway, we're gonna be talking about unions and coffee and Starbucks today, because there's been a massive wave of Starbucks location unionizations around the country, and I'd like to start by kind of discussing the origin of this like wave of unionization efforts all across the states?
Yeah. So, I'll just say right off the bat, like legalities, logistics, the nitty gritty is still not my forte in all of this. So I might not do the best job explaining it, but I'm going to do my best. And to get into the origin story of the whole movement, I'm just going to get into my origin story a little bit with this effort. So I started working at Starbucks last year, and not long after, I was approached by my fellow partner, my friend Tyler DeGear, and he's also one of our committee members here. And he was like, "Hey, did you hear about what just happened in Buffalo?" And as you guys probably know, Buffalo was the first to unionize. And so he was really excited about it. I was like, "Yeah, sounds cool. Probably not my thing though." And he was like, "No, it is. Like, just let's talk about it." I was like, "All right, fine." And we talked about it. I was like, "Oh, this makes so much sense. We should definitely do this." So as far as I know, this started in Buffalo. They reached out to Workers United because they knew that this was something they needed and wanted. And then when they successfully unionized, I mean, it just sparked so much inspiration across the country, and we hopped on really quick. Other locations in Boston also hopped on not long after. And it kind of spread like wildfire.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to watch the kind of wave of attempts, and in some cases, like in a lot of cases, like successful attempts, just kind of take just go all like it. How fast they've been happening in so many different places around the country. I like to talk about like why the Starbucks unionization kind of effort is so important. Like why this is like, of course, like unions are obviously like generally a net good, but like why specifically is it important to unionize these Starbucks locations? Like what types of like issues is the unionization trying to kind of solve and give workers better conditions at these stores and cafes?
So this great question. And first I want to start by saying Starbucks is a great place to work. I say that all the time. I reap the benefits. There are benefits, good ones. They pay minimum wage or whatever. Like the pay is decent. We have benefits. It's really a lot of people who work at our Starbucks say it's one of the better jobs they've had. And we deserve a union really, in my brain, it's kind of akin to insurance, right? You have it in case you need it. If an emergency happens, you don't have to pay the whole ER bill out of pocket. You've got some coverage coming from somewhere, right? That, at least in my mind, is what this union is for. That being said, we also just want to obviously democratize our workplace. We want to have a spot at the bargaining table because we have HR, we have people to go to, but unions are partners looking out for partners, and that's it. Starbucks looks out for partners and profit. It's a business. It's a huge business. So this would just give us a stronger sense of empowerment. And again, I really think of it kind of like insurance. It's just us making sure we're taken care of at all times.
Yeah, and what type of kind of, I know whenever the discussion of unions kind of starts at workplaces, there's always like an element of like secrecy and, being worried about, different types of suppression. So what types of kind of things have people been doing when the union is like trying to get off the ground to organize? Like are people using like Signal chats? Like what is like in these stores, how are we trying to get more people to be comfortable with this idea and get started with the organizing process?
That's a really good question. And we're still doing that work all the time. That work doesn't really end, especially because it's commonly known now, so I don't feel as scared to say it, but there is union busting happening. It's happening all the time. And it's scary and it's intimidating and it's meant to be and it's effective, you know? So we have a majority yes vote in my store. I already know that. But it also takes upkeep. It takes maintenance. It takes checking in with people and, you know, for my money, checking in and saying, hey, how are you feeling about this? Are you doing okay? Like, I know that this is scary. I know that you're hearing things like, do you have any questions? It takes us doing our due diligence and researching the things that they're saying. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a constant thing. As far as like technically how it's done, I mean, lots of group chats, just like way too many group chats.
That has been most of my experience with most political organizing in general is just way too many group chats.
Yeah.
In terms of like what Starbucks is doing to start their like union busting response is this website that they've launched. Yeah, I know you've tweeted about this site, so I would love to discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, I just went off. I didn't really think much of it, you know. I saw it on there and just was like, this is lies. I mean, well, for one, I'm trying to remember everything I read and tweeted, but the one that's coming to mind is when they say this may affect your relationship with your store manager and it may make it difficult for to me, that may depends entirely on how much union busting Starbucks wants to do. If you want to tell our store managers that this will negatively impact our relationship with them, if that's how you want to frame it, then yeah, it probably will. If you want to make it more difficult by not negotiating the contract easily with us, yeah, then that might happen. That's not a union problem. That's a Starbucks problem that they are framing as a union problem. Yeah, I can't. What were the other things that I commented on?
I mean, I would just like to also explain like what the site is and what it's like trying to do.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's it's union busting. It's giving partners the facts that they need to know. You know, like it's we want to make sure that you are informed before you vote no. That's what that is.
Yeah, it's this like sleekly designed page that has a list of facts about union organizing and all the reasons why it's going to negatively affect your relationship with the Starbucks Corporation.
Oh, yeah. This was one of the points said, the union may not negotiate for some things you are hoping for, and some things you value now might go away. That is so ridiculous.
That's a threat.
Yeah.
That's a threat. That's a threat that your well-being will be changed.
Like, we might not negotiate this contract very nicely with you. The union is us. They love to talk about the third party and, oh, your store manager is going to have to work with a steward. The steward is going to be someone who already works in the store.
Yes.
The steward is us. The union is us. Why would we negotiate a contract that doesn't benefit us? That's so silly. It makes no sense.
It's very typical union busting kind of behavior. And if this type of propaganda, can just convince a few people and scare only a couple of the people, that'll be enough to kind of cause division and shut down efforts in the store, right? So that's all that their goal is to prevent, at least one more store from not doing it. That's like as long as they do that, then it's like successful.
Absolutely.
And, based on how many people work at an individual store, that's not like entirely unlikely, right? It will, like union busting efforts do work in a lot of cases, and that's why they still do them. Like that's
absolutely, yeah. And that's why it's really important for if there are any partners listening to this. And partners, by the way, is what, we call ourselves at Starbucks.
Yes.
The social aspect of this within your store, the checking in with your partners and seeing how they're feeling about it and having as many face-to-face conversations as you can have, and really, really sticking by each other is really important because, yeah, like I said, these tactics are tried and true. They're effective. They're intimidating. And so you have to really support each other through that and keep reminding each other, like, no, there's a reason we're doing this. This is actually still a good thing, you know, because on top of our jobs, and then a lot of partners are in school or they have families, like we already have a lot going on. And then we have to go into work and be reminded that our desire for a union is not valuable to Starbucks. And so they're going to make things harder by doing all the things they're doing. You have to really, really be there for each other through this process.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, solidarity, one of the key tenets of this type of, you know, this type of organizing.
Absolutely.
I know Chris is a pretty big union appreciator. I mean, I like unions, but Chris really enjoys a union. So I'm wondering if you have anything.
He likes them so much. He'll even like unionized coffee. He'll be like, "This coffee's delicious."
It will.
What's in this?
It will convert Chris. Absolutely.
Yeah. Some of the there's some stores in Chicago that are unionizing, and I'm like, maybe we should go check them out.
Yeah, you should at least check them out and say like hi and be like, yeah, good job, guys.
What's a great thing to do? Definitely go to those stores, go up to the counter and offer order your coffee, and then ask them to write like Union Strong or We Love Unions as your name. Because when the baristas are making the coffee and they see that sticker come through, we really love that.
Chris, they have great tea there too. Ice cream.
That's true.
Well,
I drink a
Get the
I drink
honey
a lot
citrus
of chai.
mint tea. It's really good. Or the chai. Like, listen, I'm
that's really
saying
helpful information though about like, yeah, we have there's finally a store that's like somewhat near Los Angeles where I am that has announced that they're unionizing, which is exciting. Like, okay,
Wow.
California, way to join the party late, but you know, it's cool. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I'm interested in is like how big is the shop? Like how many people are sort of like, well, I'm not just like just how many people there like could potentially join the union?
I mean, anyone could. I think we have about 20. I could be so wrong, but I think we have around 20 partners in our store right now. And yeah, just about anybody could join.
That
not
seems
anyone
pretty...
who's salaried.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, that seems pretty common across all the different stores. Is around that, or it's around like 20 union eligible people per location. Seems roughly accurate based on the stuff I've seen from, you know, Seattle to Philadelphia to Boston to Buffalo to, you know, all places in between. And yeah, so part of like the actual more organizational structure is linked to Workers United. Yes, part of the Service Employees International Union affiliate, kind of a family of unions, who's kind of led the campaign, or, you know, has been part of the campaign to unionize the, you know, thousands of locations through the states. And yeah, I think around like 80 locations, including 2 of the company's flagship ones inside Seattle and New York, have joined this effort. And it does seem like every day there's like more stores popping up who are saying, yeah, this is a good idea. This is, you know, whether it be to, you know, be like, yeah, some of our equipment is old and it's like, you know, it causes like heat burns because it's not like maintenance properly, or being like, yeah, there's a lot of like sexual harassment caused by like some patrons that never gets addressed by management.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, saying like, yeah, I maybe deserve to be paid more than $15 an hour. With rent being, you know, as high as it is, maybe we should be paying over $20 an hour.
I don't know how everybody else is doing, but my rent situation is interesting. So definitely
rent has been ballooning in recent months. Even it's been really going up, which I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point on the show here. But yeah, like there's a lot of issues that are being like, yeah, maybe people should be paid more. People should be at the bargaining table. There's a lot of things to address to make it a safer workplace, to make it a workplace where you're more respected. And it's really nice to see people saying, yeah, I'm not going to put up with this anymore, and we can do something about it. Because like there are mechanisms to do this, right? That's why it's happening. So that's very very exciting to see this taking place.
It really is. And it, you make a lot of great points and bring up a lot of the benefits of having a union. And it just surprises me how anti-union Starbucks is period. Cause it's like, I don't know, you paint such a beautiful picture, because it is a beautiful picture to have autonomy and respect and empowerment in the workplace. They train us to work through the lens of humanity, by their words. And it's pretty humane to let people have a real say in the workplace, Yeah,
I think it kind of exposes that type of, pretty corporate language that
performative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's I am interested in like the other like kind of union busting or soft union busting kind of stuff going on, even like before this website, in terms of how management's been responding, and how more like what the local responses to when stores start talking about this.
Yeah, and another follow up to that is I noticed that COVID was mentioned on this website. Is that being brought up within union busting at all, or is that it was like a huge red flag for me that they used like, well, we helped you during COVID as like a thing.
We were there for you.
Which,
yeah,
like,
that
I
is.
hope so.
Which really did not sit
That's
well
like
with me.
that's like abusive terminology.
That is pretty manipulative to be like, we helped you during a pandemic. It's like, well, yes, as you should.
Because you're the place where I was employed. I give something to you, you give something to me.
And as I Twitter ranted in the comment, like, with peace and love, we had to beg to get our cafe closed, like we like, it wasn't like we just cases rose and they came in and said, hey guys, we're gonna close it. Like we were calling and making a stink, and I mean, we were talking about striking, but then remembered we're not unionized yet, so we didn't. But I mean, it was we were really fed up with people sitting in there for hours with their faces out, as cases were rising. So great point. That's really pretty manipulative, because like, you should be helping us through COVID. That's not a benefit. That's just
no.
baseline.
That's like
That's
not murder. Yeah, it's not killing people. That's like should be something that's just kind of always there. Shouldn't be an extra,
Yeah, and I mean, as far as sort of local interference, I guess I'll say, I do want to say, in my case, our store manager, I really care about her. I have a great working relationship with her. I really respect her. She's done a lot of good for our store, and she's really just doing the best she can, having conversations with us. She has her opinions and feelings about it, and I just try to listen to them, and she listens to mine. But they're definitely, I mean, as soon as we filed for an election, as soon as we started organizing and they sort of caught wind, we started having barista meetings, which are as vague as they sound. And people who had worked there longer than me said, we've never had these before. Maybe once, in a few years. So we started having all these meetings and not even talking about the union at first, but all of a sudden they wanted to hear from us and fix things in the store and all this stuff and be super helpful and present. And then there definitely just was a heightened corporate presence in the store. people we'd never seen before coming in like, hey, how you doing? Want to talk? It's like, no, you're a stranger. I don't want to talk to you. So that was weird. But yeah, there's definitely just a shift in presence. Again, we have these meetings and yeah, it's been interesting.
What do you how do you see like the situation resolving? Like, do you like how like do you and also like, yeah, what's like the state of your stores specifically?
Yeah, so we are on our way to an election. We've requested an election, so we're really just like in a waiting period for that. We don't know exactly when it's going to be. We've heard soon, but who knows when that is. We have we had to like do a Zoom hearing for some of the legalities for things here in Massachusetts. That was interesting. But yeah, so we're just waiting for the election at this point. And the election is what will, that's when we're going to cast our yes or no vote. And we will find out whether or not we're going to unionize. And I think we will unionize. It's looking that way. I'm confident. And I really look forward to that.
What do you think, what do you see as happening after the vote is done? Like assuming it is a vote yes, like how do you think this will impact working at the store going forward?
It's going to be interesting and it's going to be an adjustment, right? Because from the time that we vote and we vote yes, let's say we vote yes and we're going to unionize, it could take a long time. It could take a year. We don't know. It could take more or less to get from that vote to, what we refer to as the bargaining table, to negotiating a contract with Starbucks. And in that time, there are things, and again, if partners are listening, you can do your research on this on the NLRB website. There are things that will be different in that waiting period, right? So if Starbucks decides to release a nationwide spring raise, because why not? We love giving you raises. We would be exempt from that because we're in negotiations, because we're in this sort of in-between spot. There are little weird things that we might have to just be aware of, know going in that sort of interim. And then eventually, those raises and any other things that we've sort of been waiting on get brought to the bargaining table.
Yeah, I think this is an important thing for people to understand when you're doing union organizing, right? Is you have this giant push, and you have to have the push to get either recognition or to get the National Labor Relations Board vote. But most unions that go under in like before the first contract, and you have to that's something that when you talk to people who are professional union organizers, they talk about this constantly, which is like you have to hold it together during that period between your first, between when you get recognized or win your vote and that first contract. And it's hard in a lot of ways, because the things we're talking about, like management will do, they'll intensify the union busting because they're hoping the union will still fall apart. But if you hold it together, and if you get that first contract, your union, you now have a union, and you've basically stabilized. And at that point, you now have a seat at the table, and you have to take your seat at the table and fight.
Yeah,
but
it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
When you say hold it together during that time, do you mean just through those changes and that interim and that sort of weird, awkward phase, you have to just hold it together mentally and just kind of power through it?
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, you have to just keep making sure everyone's involved, which is something that is difficult because especially after sort of the initial
people lose steam. You know?
And because people have a job to do this entire time, right? They're still making coffee, they're still making podcasts, they're still doing whatever. So you still have your work.
have you ever done, this is sort of beside the point, but it's fun. Have you guys ever done like the 16 personality assessment?
At some point, yes.
I've never done it.
It's really fun. I just did it for school, and it's the thing that tells you like I'm an INFJ T,
Yes.
and my thing is the advocate. Sophie, what's yours? You look like you had one ready to go.
I don't remember what it was, but I remember having to do it like 15 times in school.
Yeah, I also
Yeah.
I also forget the one that I did for when I was in school as well.
But I brought it up because I'm thinking I want to send it to my fellow organizers and be like, do this, and we can sort of highlight what each other's strengths are,
Sure.
and start playing into those. Because like you were saying, Chris, like it really is a team effort. And I think it only really works if you are utilizing people and respecting people's strengths, because not everyone has the same strengths. Like, yeah, you might be a kick-ass graphic designer, but like not everyone can do that. Maybe they're better at hosting get-togethers, or they're better at writing emails or whatever.
And I think, yeah, playing to strengths is so important in the long run because, yeah, it can take a year to get to the negotiating table, which like is horrible. Like that shouldn't be. Like it shouldn't be that long. And tactics such as like specifically, raising wages around a unionization effort so that people in the union don't get it. That is like another form of union busting. Like that is like, don't think they haven't thought that through. Like that is part of that whole process being like, oh yeah, you could have a union or you could get higher wages now. That is part of what's going on. It's because they want people to not sign on to have long-term benefits. So they're going to offer these short-term benefits. So like, it really is like because of how elongated the unionization process can be, it gives a lot of time for people to get burnt out. And combating that and like combating being burnt out is one of the most important parts. And yeah, it's really challenging sometimes.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, I love that conversation. I'm like a mental health dweeb. It's what my podcast is called, Your Messy Friend. And that's basically all I talk about is mental health. And yeah, the burnout, I mean, I'm recovering from burnout right now, it's very real. You have to make sure that, while you're taking care of everybody else and making these efforts, like you have to make sure that you are checking in with yourself every day and making sure your needs are being met. 'Cause giving from an empty tank does not last long.
Yep.
As I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah. If you if the water in your espresso machine is out, then nothing can flow through to make the
then
anyway.
No
Well,
ristretto shots for you, baby.
exactly.
Yeah.
See, it was what a amazingly crafted metaphor I just did.
Not tortured at all.
Anyway.
So what is the like turnover rate at the store like? Like how quickly are people coming in and out of jobs, and how has that been affecting organizing?
Oh, that's a cool question. We haven't had a ton of people leave since I got there. I mean, and I can pretty confidently say none of those had to do with unionizing. It was all for just like different reasons. We've had quite a few more people come in recently, and I would say that I mean it's weird because our current store manager, who's great, she was hired around the same time that we really started amping up union stuff, and it's almost unfortunate because I think she thought it was about her, and it just so wasn't, but yeah, so who knows if it was just because she was there now or because of the union stuff or both, but they did start hiring quite a few more people around the time that we started organizing. And yeah, I mean, you have to walk this fine line when you have new people coming in. Of course, you want to get to them and give them your info, or at least give them resources to look into before corporate gets to them. But then you also, they're learning a new job.
Yeah.
it's really fast paced and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like you have to be careful not to totally overwhelm them either.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really something I've just tried to keep in mind throughout the whole process is like when my friend Tyler approached me, I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is necessary for me. And now I'm on the committee,
Yeah.
So I you know what I mean? Like it's that thing where I'm like, okay, if I could be convinced, maybe anyone can.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there any direct action that people who are listening or any call to action you have for us that we can provide to our listeners or links or anything that you think would be useful for our people to know?
That's a cool idea. Yeah, thanks. Like we mentioned before, if you want to just like stop by your local unionizing Starbucks and get a coffee with the name, Unionize or Union Strong, that in-person support, especially when you're first organizing, is really, really helpful. Even just stopping by to like drop off a card or say, hey, good luck with unionizing. That really means a lot. You can follow SB Workers United on Instagram and Twitter and just engage with us. Reach out if you need info about how to organize. The people on Instagram are on all the platforms, they're just like so on top of responding. And websites. I think we have a website.
I would assume so.
I would assume at this point. Yeah. I mean, we have a pretty poppin' Instagram and Twitter, but yeah, I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I think that's about it. And just making noise online is also really helpful. I love when people comment on Starbucks posts and they're like, yeah, how about unions though?
Yeah.
What about a little union?
The website is sbworkersunited.org.
Thank you.
Affiliated with the Workers United and the Starbucks unionizing effort, which has ways to donate or buy merch in support of the union and that kind of stuff, which funds all go to the campaign.
And just in case it wasn't clear, and this is something you'll hear from Starbucks, is all of this about the third party and Workers United is going to do this and that and blah blah. We essentially, we work with that. They promote our cause. You know what I mean? They're here to support our mission and our goals. I mean, you'd be amazed by how much partners do for this. Workers United does so much, but we do the nitty gritty every day, communicating with each other. We're communicating nationally now. We have a platform for that. And it's really cool. And so they're kind of like, I don't know, the supporting beams of everything we're doing. It's us.
But yeah, but the actual makeup of it definitely is with Starbucks employees. I've in all the people I've been in Twitter conversations with.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the Sixth Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
DMs who are involved. It's like, yeah, like everyone who's like actively involved in doing it all has worked at a Starbucks before, and still are. Like it is definitely being led by the workers.
Yep.
And yeah, that's really great and really crucial. Do you have any other pluggables either for yourself or for anything else in general?
Plug your pod.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. This was really fun. Thank you for having me on. I love podcasting. So yeah, I mentioned SB Workers United on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure you give them a follow. Follow baristas you find along the way who are, speaking up about this. Show them your support. My podcast is called Your Messy Friend. You can find me, I think, wherever you get your podcasts. Definitely Spotify. That's what I use. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, thank you so much, Kaylee, for joining us today to talk about Starbucks and unions. Follow us online on Twitter and Instagram at HappenHerePod and Cool Zone Media. And I think that does it for us.
Can't wait for y'all to win.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Can't wait for you guys to win. As soon as Portland locations start going, I'll definitely go in and support. But until then, I will make coffee alone in my lonely espresso machine. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on to talk.
Thank you so much.
Hey
there, I'm Jess.
Milady Confetti here.
Hi, I'm Psyche.
And I'm Hey Shady Lady.
And welcome to Boss Level,
a podcast where we feature conversations with guests who have leveled up, bringing an XP boost to the table.
That was always my response, was like, I am like a unicorn here, right? Like, because there's not a lot of like out of the closet female gamers. It's not to say there's not female gamers. I know a lot of them. There's a lot. But like, it was like a battlefield. They're like, this is our cool boys club and you can't be here. And I'm like, no, sorry, honey. This is a very dark corner and I'm a lot of light and I'm coming right into this corner. Hi.
We pick the brains of professionals, creators, and bosses in industries across the globe to help our listeners achieve their own boss level.
We are not just creating a podcast, but a gamified and engaged community.
Listen to Boss Level on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If I could be you.
And you could be me.
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way.
To get inside.
Each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Look through your children's eyes to see the true magic of a forest. It's a storybook world for them. You look and see a tree. They see the wrinkled face of a wizard with arms outstretched to the sky. They see treasure in pebbles. They see a windy path that could lead to adventure. And they see you, their fearless guide through this fascinating world.
Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here, a podcast about things falling apart and even occasionally about trying to put them back together. Today, as is too often the case, we're going to be focused more on the falling apart thing, because today we are talking about the situation in Ukraine. It is, as I type, or not type because I'm not writing, but you get how I'm used to thinking. As I say this, Russian troops have just moved in to two regions in eastern Ukraine that have been occupied by what are generally called Russian-backed separatists since 2014. Vladimir Putin gave a speech that we will be talking about a bit with our guest, and announced his intention to recognize those breakaway sections of the country as independent republics, and the area that he has chosen to recognize includes about 70% territory that is currently occupied and held by the Ukrainian government. So it's a big mess. This is, some have said, like a soft version of the invasion that people were expecting. I think it's probably more accurate to say it's a slow start compared to what is potentially possible and very likely coming in the future. To talk more about this and about being an anarchist kind of trapped in between, NATO and Russia and everything that's flinging around right now, is Ukrainian journalist Romeo Kukratsky. Romeo, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Been a big fan of yours, so it's a honor to be here.
And you're in Kiev right now, right?
Yeah, correct.
And how is, everybody keeps asking this all around, but how is the mood, as to the extent that there's a way of saying that? Like I've have things kind of taken a turn since Putin actually made his first big play?
I mean, as much as journalists like to say, there is no magic moodometer to check to instantly poll every resident of the city to find out.
Yeah, walk around and talk to everybody. Yeah.
Just like all the 4 million or whatever citizens of the city. Let me just ask them. But like, there definitely has been a turning point. Like one of the big refrains that I've seen, like personally, and everyone has been saying, right, is that Ukrainians are so calm. Look at these pictures of them like shopping in malls and like going to school.
What else are you supposed to do?
Yeah, honestly, what else are we supposed to do? But I mean, it is true. People have been calm. But since yesterday evening, there definitely has been a shift, and even casual conversation in Kyiv. Like I was sitting to paraphrase a famous columnist's usual framing, I was sitting in a cafe in Kiev and overhearing the waitstaff chat amongst themselves. And obviously the whole conversation is, is Putin going to push into Kiev? And anecdotally, or semi-anecdotally, I guess, apartment prices in the western cities, like in Lviv and Uzhhorod, have really spiked up like incredibly.
Oh boy.
So people are, I wouldn't call that.
That's a depressing way to pay attention to that, or reason to pay attention to that.
Like, I wouldn't call it a mass panic. There are no like bank runs, no like all the stores are stocked, no one's like hoarding. But at the same time, there is a steady trickle of people going west and kind of making plans at this point.
Yeah, and so this, to kind of give people a little bit more context before we get into some of the more political dimensions of this. Right now, there has not been a massive escalation of violence outside of the areas where there has been fighting for several years. There has been an escalation on the front line that's existed since 2014. But there has not been troops pouring across the border in other areas and stuff. And that's obviously probably the number one worry. It looks like what's about to happen is, or at least it's hard to say, because Putin has recognized the borders of this breakaway part of Ukraine as significantly larger than the area they actually control. And he has moved troops, Russian active duty troops, into that area. Now, Russian troops, from what I've heard, about 3,000 have been in the breakaway areas for years now. But a significant
rotating.
A significant number have been added now. And obviously the fear is that because he has recognized the territory of these quote unquote, in his terms, breakaway republics as being much larger than what they control, that Russian troops are going to participate with the separatists in attacking and taking those territories from the Ukrainian government. That's one concern. Obviously, the concern attached to that is that it would be not at all inconceivable for a conflict that started that way to spread to a much wider part of Ukraine. This is all coming alongside a speech Putin gave that unfortunately is going to be one of those things people hear about in history books.
Utterly deranged.
Out of its goddamn mind.
Utterly deranged.
And it's one of those things. We will talk some more about how the Western left sometimes. I don't want to be like, because this is also largely the online left, but how the online left talks about Putin sometimes. This was not I want to return to the Soviet Union speech. This was I want to return to Tsarist Russia's borders type speech. Like
the guy has the Tsarist imperial crest emblazoned on the gates to his palace.
Yeah.
So I'm really not sure what people would have expected.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he's better at his job than any of the last czars were, because he's achieved a notable amount of success towards that goal already. And yeah, he a number of things that were, it's one of those, like one of the things he said, which is a line that folks like him in Russia have been saying for a while, is that the existence of Ukraine as an independent polity is a mistake. And as an anarchist, there's this like, well, yeah, I don't like the Ukrainian state. I don't like any state in particular. But if your only disagreement is with the statehood of Ukraine and you're fine with the statehood of Russia, then perhaps what you actually think is that people in Ukraine should not have any autonomy to disagree with the government in Moscow. And I think that's the case here. There's similarities between how Putin and those like him in Russia treat Ukrainians, with how, for example, the Turks treat Kurds in the southern part of the country. There's this thing you'll hear a lot from Turkey, where like there's no Kurds in Turkey. They're mountain Turks who've lost their language, and there's this denial from Putin and the Russians that Ukrainians are a people, that they exist, and this is something that has translated. Most people have heard versions of this in just any of the coverage you've heard of Ukraine. If you've ever heard of it referred to as the Ukraine, what that is part of a very old line that kind of exists to allow Russians to deny the existence of Ukrainians as a people and make it seem more like it's just kind of a geographic region, which is not the case, and why you wouldn't call it the Ukraine any more than you would call it the Canada. It just isn't the way you should say that. But yeah, so I think that's at least enough of a background to get into the real meat of what we want to talk about. So, and I'm just going to kind of open this up to you to chat about what you'd like to say and what you think needs to be gotten across to the international left, because internationalism is something we value a lot here, and it has been hard to find in this conflict.
Yeah. Like, growing up in New York in the 90s, one of the core values I kind of absorbed, I guess, through osmosis is the value that every single person I met, regardless of whatever corner of the world they came from, is the exact same human being as me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, and that kind of realization was one of the things that, I guess, I wouldn't say pushed, but conspired to turn me into a leftist, a socialist, Marxist. And part of that, especially when I was learning about what the hell all of these isms were, was internationalism. The idea that, well, our struggle isn't within the fabricated borders of whatever polity has decided to impose their authority, but internationally, every single worker is the same as every other worker. We're all struggling with the same issues. We're all fighting the same forces. And generally speaking, we have the same enemies. Now, fast forward to 2022, I go online and what do I see? Well, Ukrainians are all Nazis, or Ukraine shouldn't exist, or how can we support either of those? It's two fascist states fighting each other. And I'm sorry, Ukraine's got a population of 44 million. You want to tell me that every single one of those 44 million are Nazis? Like, people didn't even say that about Germany.
Yeah.
And they were literally the Nazi state.
I mean, or the United States, for
or
that
the
matter.
US.
Yeah.
Like, we had 4 years of Trump, an openly fascist, authoritarian leader. And no one seems to say, well, I guess the U.S. should be bombed. Well, I guess there are some.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely people who say that, but yeah.
But generally speaking, that's not exactly the view that people take, right? So it's been a long process of disappointment. Well, I say long. There's always been the kind of, well, what do these people really think about Ukraine? But bereft of such a strong impetus to take a side, I guess, it hasn't been in the forefront. And now every day I see people that I would have considered comrades, that I would have considered friends and brothers, just kind of turn their back on me because I live here, right? Any aggression, any action that's taken will literally affect me physically sitting here in Kyiv. So it's been really, really immensely disheartening to see that every single value that I thought the left was supposed to value, that I thought the left was built on, be betrayed by people with rose emojis or hammer and sickles in their usernames or whatever the hell it is.
And we should probably talk about some of why this is and what the history is here. So the most kind of direct thing that people can point to when they call Ukraine a fascist state or when they talk about this is the existence of the Azov Battalion. The Azov Battalion is a paramilitary organization. That means it's not officially a part of the governmental military structure, but it has received arms from the government, and it functions as part of Ukraine's defense forces for the purposes of fighting off the Russian-backed separatists. And the Azov Battalion are Nazis. There's been a tremendous amount of reporting on that matter. It's a big problem, and the Ukrainian government deserves a significant amount of criticism for the degree to which Azov has been allowed to continue existing. But there's also a lot that gets left out when people focus on that, including the fact that, for example, the political wing of Azov, right sector, which is kind of it would be fair to call that the umbrella term for like the far right parties in the Ukrainian government, have been pretty effectively siloed away from political power through very active measures to about 1% of representation. And so
they didn't actually pass the threshold to enter the new parliament.
Yeah.
Like they're non-entity politically. They're just non-popular. Their campaigns fail. Their mottos fail. Their agitation fails. Ukrainians do not want to vote for Nazis.
Yeah, and it is an ugly situation. I remember talking with, when I was reporting on the Maidan uprisings, which is when, again, for people who aren't up on recent Ukrainian history, they had a president who tried to do a dictatorship, and people rose up and fought him in the streets. It was a very gnarly time. About 200 people were shot by government forces. And eventually the president was forced to flee the country, which is what precipitated everything that's happening now, because that president was pretty closely tied with Putin, and the people fighting him were not pro-NATO rebels, but they were definitely more supportive of closer ties with Western Europe than they were with Russia. And that, again, those are kind of the precipitating events for everything that's happening now. And some of the people who were fighting the president's forces were fascists. And it's one of those things. I remember talking with protesters at the time who were like, well, am I supposed to fight with them at the same time as I'm trying not to get shot by riot police? Like, what do you expect me to do? And it is a nasty situation. And it's one of those things, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell people about that, because it's ugly, and it's uncomfortable, and it's messy. And that's also Ukrainian history. There's a lot of ugly, uncomfortable, messy things here, as there is with every country's history. It doesn't mean people in Kiev deserve to have their housing blocks pounded by Russian artillery. It doesn't mean that people in Avdiivka deserve to have their homes pounded by artillery. And whatever criticisms you want to make about how the Russian government or how the Ukrainian government has handled Azov, and there are many criticisms to make, that's not really relevant to the people living in these areas having their homes destroyed on a daily basis by mortar fire.
I just want to make like a couple of things really clear. The Azov battalion is like 1,000 guys.
Yeah.
Like max. And one of the reasons at least, that they rose to such prominence in the beginning wasn't only their ability to mobilize in the early stages of the Russian war against Ukraine. It was also because they had very strong financial backing from the former interior minister, Arsen Avakov. And Avakov is no longer in power. And one of the things you can see immediately was the almost nullifying of fascist street marches and fascist demonstrations in Kiev, outside the president's office. That all vanished because more in Ukraine, ideology is not very strong. And this is something that I've noticed a lot of people from the US and Europe have trouble understanding about Ukrainian politics. People here are not really ideological. Our parties don't map, aside from a couple of outliers like Right Sector. It doesn't really map to any left-right access. People typically will always want the same policies. Like, they always want a pension. They always want universal healthcare to be better. They always want the roads fixed. Generally, policy is something most Ukrainians actually agree on. As a result, most of our elections are purely personality-based. That's one of the reasons Zelensky, Volodymyr Zelensky, our current president, won, was because he was a well-known comedian.
Yeah.
And people liked his personality. And he put out a whole TV show as a PR stunt.
Yeah.
Before launching his campaign. And people voted for that personality they saw on screen. And so when there was far-right activity, and again, I want to stress that activity, even the street activity, has almost disappeared. It's because the far-right is typically used in Ukraine as a political tool by one oligarch or one interest group against another. That's why when the money disappeared, they disappeared. Because the leadership of these fascist groups, typically speaking, were not that ideological themselves, but they did like having USUVs, and they did like buying guns and hiring hookers and doing drugs. Like, they liked the money, and that's why they did it. And they would convince a bunch of teenagers to go out and wave a couple of torches and march and chant. But these guys were really purely in for the money. And again, you can tell that because when their financial backer disappeared, they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that is very frustrating to me. I can remember one of the earliest projects that I did that was like for Bellingcat, there was a Pride March in Kiev that got attacked by Nazis. This was a couple of years back. And we were kind of trying to identify the individual fascists who were like beating people in the street. And it's spending hours poring over that footage. It makes it incredibly frustrating that there are people outside of the country boiling it down to, well, all of those people are fascists. All of those people are part of a fascist state. And it's like, no, a lot of those people, quite a few Ukrainians have fought Nazis in the streets, you know? That's a reality of the situation. And it's ugly in part because if you actually want to look at what's been happening with the Russian-backed separatists, there's a lot of fucking fascists over there. There's a lot of paramilitary organizations and like far-right groups that have been used by the Russian government.
Wagner PMC.
Yeah.
Literally named because their fascist leader.
Yeah.
likes Wagner, like many Nazis. It's hard to understand, honestly, from my perspective, because not only is Russian fascism have far more influence on Russian policy than any Ukrainian fascist has ever had in Ukrainian policy. It's also that the Russian project and the narrative they use, there's this joke they call, or not really joke, a slur. They call Ukrainians Nazi Banderists.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, Bandera was a Ukrainian nationalist leader, a partisan, fought against the Soviets, and his organization was implicated in quite a few war crimes.
Yeah, significant number of war crimes. Too many war crimes. Yeah.
So clearly, Bandera himself, probably not a great guy.
Yeah.
But to delegitimize all Ukrainian kind of independence movements that have cropped up over the years, the Soviet government and now the Russian government has always insisted that there is no legitimate way for Ukraine to be independent. We're all Nazi Banderists, no matter what. And that's why you had, there's a picture a couple of days ago of a solidarity march in Kiev with some of Kiev's LGBT community holding up Banderas flags. Not because they're gay Nazis, but because it's a way of retaking this slur back from the Russians.
And it's all part of the complicating factor here is that because of how geopolitics worked out in that period of time, there are very uncomfortable but kind of inextricable ties between Ukrainian the basic idea of Ukraine being a nation independent from Russia and anti-communism. And because of what was going on in anti-communism in that period of time, we're talking the 30s and 40s, it means that a decent number of those early Ukrainian nationalists were either directly implicated with the Nazis like Bandera or at least had uncomfortable ties. And that's a messy part of history that shouldn't be shied away from. But for example, the same thing is true of Finland. Like, you can say the exact same thing about fucking Finnish nationalism, Finnish sovereignty and whatnot. And people don't call Finland a Nazi nation, even though, the fact that they were stuck between the USSR and Nazi Germany means that there were a lot of Finns in that period of time who made some real fucked up choices. But also there's a lot that has to be you can't adequately discuss why those choices were made if you don't talk about, for example, the Holodomor, which was the starvation genocide of several million Ukrainians by the Soviet government.
And honestly, to go back even further and to, I don't know, burnish my leftist credentials a little bit, if you go back to the Civil War itself, where a lot of this started, most of the nationalist groups, I would say nearly all of them, there were one or two minor monarchist groups in Ukraine, but the grand majority of them were in fact socialism or socialist.
Yeah.
They had like the hammer and sickle and wheat on their currency and everything, because at the time that was what won votes from the peasantry. But when the Bolsheviks crushed every independent Ukrainian social movement, in exchange for bureaucrats that they imported from the empire and just shoved into Ukrainian cities. Well, then you had Ukrainians that wanted to be independent and wanted to have a better life than under the Tsar. Well, now suddenly they don't even have that support from the Bolsheviks. And obviously, as a Ukrainian, I can't talk about this without bringing up Nestor Makhno, who was a anarchist leader, the leader of the Ukrainian Black Army during the Civil War. And what happened to them? Well, the Bolsheviks betrayed them and killed all of them and crushed the movement. And then smeared them all as pedophile, rapist, cannibals, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. There's a lot of disinformation you can find about that time. Just like today, only the names have changed.
Exactly. So if there is no other outlet for Ukrainian nationalism, and the group that you thought may be an ally in destroying the empire, in granting you self-determination, turns out to be a continuation of that exact empire, well, it's pretty logical, maybe not right, but it is pretty logical for people to go to the other extreme.
And it's one of the things I think that should be noted more, as we talked about earlier, is that one of these stories of Ukrainian politics, particularly in the last, close to a decade since the Maidan, is that mainstream Ukrainian political leaders and Ukrainian voters have overwhelmingly rejected that sort of nationalism this time around, and have gone out of their way to silo it out of active political power, in a way that one could argue is more successful than has been done in the United States. And
yeah, absolutely. We didn't elect Trump.
Yeah. No, you guys basically elected Jon Stewart.
Pretty much. I mean, that was his his whole thing. He put on satirical political sketches. That was the entire show. We did basically elect Jon Stewart, and I have my criticisms of Zelensky, as a lot of people do. And one of the things we love saying in Ukraine, whenever people are like, "Oh, look at all the Nazis there," we're so anti-Semitic that we elected a Jewish comedian. Yeah, that's how anti-Semitic we are. That we have huge menorahs standing in the middle of Kiev during the high holidays. That's how anti-Semitic we are.
Yeah, and Zelensky's prime minister is also a Jewish man, which makes Ukraine the second country in the world to have a Jewish president and prime minister.
Like we don't care because it doesn't even come up in campaigns. Like even when Romney was running, you'd see Democratic campaigns painting him as a scary Mormon, or the ads implying in any case a scary Mormon. You don't even have that level of religious antipathy in Ukraine.
It's just a much more complicated, when we're actually talking about the problems of the far right and of fascism, in Ukraine. It's a much more complicated story than a lot of people on, social media or whatnot want to give it credit to, because it's just easy to sum things up in one sentence and not have to care about a looming humanitarian catastrophe. But that is what we are looking at. If this invasion, it will be bad if Russia uses active forces in order to take the remainder of those two provinces from the Ukrainian government. It will be a nightmare of almost unimaginable consequence if the invasion proceeds on the wider scale that is possible at this point. And
now,
it is.
Sorry, go on.
No, please. Yeah.
I've been a doomer on this basically since I first heard about the buildup. Because Putin has made it very clear over the years what he considers Ukraine to be. Like you mentioned, he doesn't think that Ukraine should exist as like a polity. And as a result, I have pretty much this whole time been pretty sure that he's going to attack Kyiv. And now we're coming to a very definite tipping point. Just today, Putin's made a lot of moves. Like you mentioned, he authorized military force to be used in the Donbass. And actually, he's gone further. He's authorized military force to be used abroad, which, I mean, obviously that means Ukraine. Where else? That's where his, about, I think, 70 or 80% of the entire Russian army is currently around Ukraine or close enough that they can reinforce without a lot of
or at least of the active duty, because the Russian military, there's a smaller, but actually competent, right? Yes, yeah.
But the contract soldiers, yes,
yeah.
And especially on the northern border, there are a lot of battalion tactical groups that are basically sitting and waiting, I guess, for whatever the order will be eventually. And in Belarus, and since Putin has given this authorization to operate abroad, and he stated that he recognizes these puppet authorities, as I call them, that he recognizes their borders as the entirety of the Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast, which again, only a third of those territories are under the de facto control of the puppet authorities. 2/3 of both provinces are still under Ukrainian government control, including the critical port city of Mariupol. And now that Putin has authorized force to be used abroad, well, it's kind of, I mean, at least it is incredibly obvious to me what the next steps are from the Russian perspective if I want to subjugate Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I think a big failing here is people in the West, especially the Western left, know very little of, for example, the Chechen wars.
Oh, God.
Especially the Second Chechen War and what happened to Grozny.
Yeah.
During that war and what the Russians did to subjugate that population.
Yeah.
And if anyone thinks that Putin treasures Ukrainian lives any more than he did Chechen lives, then I've got a bridge of the Dnieper to sell them. Though you should act now because the value is going to drop real fast.
Yeah, and it's one of those, if you, as a good leftist, have spent a significant amount of time reading about the horrific crimes of imperialist nations in Africa and Southeast Asia, in the Americas, what the Russian Federation did there is on that scale. It's absolutely on that scale. It was a titanically ugly war. And
I mean, modernly, we can look at what they did in Syria.
Yeah, or what they are doing in Syria.
Yeah, and what they continue to do in Syria. But as it turns out, Syrians learned this lesson that I am learning now about big portions of the Western left a long time ago.
Yeah, which is that if you can find, for example, some Syrian rebels who are shitty and Islamists or whatever, you can tar every single person who ever stood up against Bashar al-Assad as a terrorist, which is really easy, especially if you're getting paid Kremlin money to advance that line and your name is Ben Norton. This brings us to the place where there really aren't clear answers, which is like what can be done. And it is one of those things where it's like, well, that's not an easy question, because you do have to, when you start grappling with like, all right, well, like what should NATO do? What should other European non-NATO nations do? Like what is actually capable of like potentially altering or disrupting the courses of action here? Well, we're talking about the Russian state, which has a lot of nukes. We're talking about a situation that could spiral out of control in a way that very few situations globally are capable of potentially spiraling out of control. And so it is not a situation where anyone who tells you this is clearly the thing to do that will work is, I think, is probably full of shit and a little unhinged, because this is a real fucking ugly one. But some of what has been done, we just got the news today that I think we both found surprising, but is very positive, that the Germans have canceled construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a gas pipeline from Russia into the EU, that a lot of folks were saying Germany was not going to take any sort of solid stances on Ukraine's behalf because of that pipeline, because of how Germany, along with a lot of Western Europe, is tremendously reliant upon Russian gas exports for just like keeping themselves heated in the winter. So that's a positive move. I tend to be critical of the ability of sanctions to do much. And if we're looking historically at sanctions, particularly how they're most often implied, they have a tendency to just harm regular people more than they have to do. Like we can look at the sanctions in Iraq, right? which were part of why something like 1 million people starved. We are talking about different kinds of sanctions in general. When we're talking about the sanctions being imposed by NATO countries against the Russian state right now, they're largely sanctions against members of the Duma. There's a lot. It's not the same as looking at like what was being done to Saddam's Iraq. That said, I'm still very hesitant to say I think that sanctions are going to disrupt Putin's course of action. I'm curious what you think can and should be done here. You know, like what is, do you have any kind of clear idea in your own head about what might have a disruptive effect on what Putin is doing?
Learn to teleport and shoot Putin in the head with a 9mm.
I mean that'd be great. There's had we that teleportation capacity, there would be a list, you know?
Unfortunately, I never put my skill points into that.
Yeah.
But realistically speaking, the Russian state is authoritarian. It doesn't really care what its own citizens think. It definitely doesn't care what other people think. However, Russia has been, at least in the modern realm, relatively image conscious, which is why I think one thing that could work, for example, or not could work, but would perhaps force the Russian state to consider its actions a little bit more carefully. And I want to be very clear. When I talk about the Russian state, I'm talking about Putin himself.
Yeah, the government.
He has there's no like other decision makers in Russia. And that was actually perfectly encapsulated during his speech the other day, where he just outright like eviscerated the head of his foreign intelligence service on live TV for the whole world to see, just utterly humiliated the guy for no real reason, just because he can. And you could see that, and we're talking about Russia's top spy, I mean, beyond Putin himself, stammering like a frightened schoolchild when Putin addressed him, with just a hint of sharpness.
Yeah.
So when I say the Russian state, I am referring literally to the body and person of Vladimir Putin. And like, honestly, yeah, I would love to see people picket Russian embassies and make demonstrations and marches and so on. Do I think that will have a practical, real effect? To be honest, no. Same with the sanctions. I'm sure Putin's pet oligarchs and members of his party and the people that, in theory, keep him in power, the oligarchs, the parliamentarians, the mafia lords, and so on, I'm sure they're going to be pretty miffed if their yachts and their multi-million-dollar properties in Miami and New York and London and the villas in the French Riviera, when all that gets taken, I'm sure they'll be pretty annoyed. But I don't think Putin cares. I think that he has a really irrational desire to subjugate Kyiv specifically. He sees Kyiv as what we call in Russian the mother of all Russian cities.
Yeah,
it's the birthplace of the Kievan Rus.
Yeah, the word Russian comes from Kievan Rus. You know, like
exactly. Yeah. And I just don't think that Putin is going to turn away from that goal.
No,
because a couple of his buddies are complaining that their mega yachts got taken in by the British authorities or whatever.
No,
nor do I think they're going to care that, you know, there are a couple of marches outside of embassies in New York or something. But that may help spur the world as a whole, the international community, into taking a harder line stance against Putin. Because time and again, like, the guy's a gangster. He's like a security service thug. If you've ever like interacted with like a petty like police sergeant or something that has just a bit of authority and pretty much total impunity, that's Putin to a T. The dude thinks he's overeducated and the cleverest man in the world.
Yeah,
but in reality, the way he talks and the way he acts, he's just a bully.
He's got the same basic personality as like Villanueva, you know, the fucking head of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. He's like not like a beat cop, but like one of the cops who rises to run a union or run a city police department.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, he's good at consolidating power. He's good at exercising or organizing others to exercise violence on his behalf. But yeah, at the end of the day, he is primarily a bully, and it's one of those. I don't know, like when it comes to arms shipments, that is a historically, again, if you look at the history of like, let's just say specifically NATO shipping arms places, most of the time that does not improve the situation for people in that country. That has been a historical reality of arms shipments, not just with NATO, as a general rule everywhere. When you ship more guns into an area, that rarely improves quality of life. But we are not talking about a country that has had any kind of centralized political legitimacy or whatnot collapse. We're not talking about a country that is in the middle of tearing itself apart between 30 or 40 different sides. It's not the same situation as, well, let's ship a bunch of guns to Libya, you know? It just isn't. They're different histories, different political realities on the ground. I don't know that I actually think any amount of arms shipments would dissuade Putin from advancing either. But I don't know what else to do. I certainly am not against the idea of like, okay, guys, have some AGTMs, you know, have some wire-guided missiles, have some javelins. Because like, what else are you going to do? I mean, we're not going to, and I'm certainly not saying we should send U.S. troops in, because again, we have to consider the nuclear situation too. I don't. What do you think is? Where are your thoughts there? Because this is something that I'm very mixed on. Although again, I'm broadly fine with. Yeah, I mean, at least give people the ability to fight back.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, especially like you noted. The military-industrial complex has very rarely improved any situation in the world anywhere.
Yep.
This might be one of the few exceptions. Because the fact is that Ukraine doesn't really have the tools to defend ourselves. We have, or at least our government claims that we have the strongest army in Europe, which, to be honest, with all of the defense cuts that European countries have made over the years, that may be true, at least on a ground sense.
Certainly the most combat experienced army in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But what we lack entirely is air power and air defense.
Yep.
And what Russia has in spades is air power and air defense. And as we saw when the U.S. Invaded Iraq, well, you can destroy a conventional army in a couple of days by just bombing the shit out of it.
Yep.
And the Russians have quite a few missiles aimed straight at Kyiv, and quite a few planes waiting on standby, I presume, to bomb the shit out of Kyiv. And it would be nice to have some way to defend ourselves against that. But again, there's not much that can be sent. Yeah, of course, Stingers and javelins and so on. That'll all help raise the costs of the occupation that follows the initial bombardment. But if Putin goes for the strategy that Assad has used in Syria, which is bomb the living shit out of every civilian residential area in the city until the people just submit or are all dead, well, there's not really too much we can do about that.
And that is like, there is a lot that that trained and motivated soldiers with small arms and munitions like javelins can do, even to resist a country with overwhelming air power. The corollary to that is that in doing that, a lot of stuff, everyone around them dies. The city is turned into a graveyard. I've seen that with my own eyes, and that's I mean, got to be the thing. If you're looking at this with any kind of reasonable eyes and not just like trying to find a political angle to support, that has to be your main concern. Is that the potential here is for a tremendous loss of life and also for the creation of millions of refugees. And this is something in another audio clip that you published a bit earlier on Twitter, you say, which is that like, if this goes as badly as it can, no matter what your politics are, this will become your problem.
100%. Yeah. I stand behind that absolutely, because there are a lot of Ukrainians, and while most of us have no desire to live under the Russian yoke, the majority of us are not trained fighters. We're just people, just regular people. And I know, especially in the US, with our like out of control gun culture, people love imagining like they're the singular guy, you know, they're the macho man with all the guns. They can take down the government all by themselves. I'm sorry, it's a fantasy. It's a fiction. That is not how things work. And quite frankly, most people are not psychologically suited to combat. That's why armies take so long to break soldiers down to teach them to murder people, because that is not something humans do naturally. And the majority of people subjected to that kind of violence will run. And again, there are 44 million of us, and they will run and run and run. Pretty much everyone in the world. You saw this with Syria, you saw this with Libya. You've seen this pretty much with every single place that has experienced massive violence in the modern world. That's the reaction.
Yeah.
And yes, when we run, we bring all of our biases and problems and cultural predilections to you.
Mm-hmm. And it's, yeah, I mean, that's really the note to end on. And it is, you get a lot of folks, you know, who rightly, you know, focus on and think a lot about revolutionary struggles in places like Vietnam and in Afghanistan, and will point out that, like, well, you don't need to have as advanced a military as your opponent to win. And again, just the corollary to that, the corollary to that is that, like, yeah, but millions of people die. Millions of people died in Afghanistan. Millions of people died in Vietnam. That is the reality. Yeah, you can resist an imperial power with minimal technology, but you're not going to leave that fight with a family alive still, you know? Like, that's how it goes. So let's all say a little prayer for, I don't know, peace. I hope the worst doesn't happen. Has there been kind of mobilization that you've seen within the activist, the anarchist community in Kiev, to, you know, any kind of mutual aid stuff, like, or is it just one of those situations where it hasn't started happening yet and nobody really knows what would even be useful to do if it does?
I'll say this, it may come as a little bit of a shock, but anarchists are not typically the best at organizing.
Yeah.
Specifically, like, a lot of my the friends who are active in the anarchist movement in Ukraine have simply joined the territorial defense battalions or the regular army and will simply fight as soldiers. There has been a very strong, I don't know if you call it denial, a colleague of mine used the term doomed optimism, and I really like the sound of that, so let's go with that.
Yeah.
There's been this really strong doomed optimism amongst Ukrainians that the worst will not happen, and there's no real reason to prepare for anything because, well, things are going to be fine. And that's what our government tells us as well. Things are going to be fine. They don't see any massive attack groups, or, I mean, I feel like that's contradicted by the open source intelligence that I've been looking at.
Yeah.
But I am just one guy. I obviously don't have the intelligence apparatus of a nation state. So, I mean, maybe they're right. But generally speaking, people have just been joining the army, going to tactical trainings. But this is all very basic stuff, like going to the woods, learn how to set up camp, and, you know, clean a rifle, kind of things.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Nothing like combat training, because where would you get that except by joining the army and going to the front?
Yeah, it's the kind of training that might keep, in the event of a full conflict, 1 out of 10 of those people alive long enough to learn how to fight.
Yeah, and that might be worth it.
If you're talking about, yes, not to say people shouldn't be doing that, because people should do
absolutely
whatever they can. How are you, kind of to close out, as this... doom scrolling is a thing we all talk about, and there's plenty. I mean, just sitting here in Portland, we just had a mass shooting on a protest this weekend, and so there's a lot of doom scrolling going on in my community. But we're not staring down the barrel of 190,000 soldiers, potentially hitting us from the air and ground simultaneously. How are you focusing on the stuff that you can do anything about and the stuff that you can productively handle without losing yourself in that?
Copious amounts of cannabis.
That's good. I'm glad you guys have decent pot access.
Yeah, I actually don't know what I'll do if my current supplies cut out, to be quite honest. But I mean, it's been definitely a struggle. In the past couple of days, especially, my mental health has not been especially great. But again, I'm one dude. Like, I'm not in very good shape. I have poor vision. One of my eyes don't work. I'm diabetic. Like, I'm not gonna go out and grab a rifle and start killing every Ruski I see, you know. But at the same time, I've got a job to do. I.e., as an English language journalist in Ukraine, I have.
This is your busy season.
Yeah, it's my busy season. Like, one of my jobs is to counter Russian disinformation and to, like, tell people the truth of what is going on here. And that role will only get more important if the conflict expands from the scope that it is now. So how am I doing? Well, I'm still alive. Haven't off myself yet. And I'm still working. So I think as good as I can be under the circumstances.
Yeah. Well, I hope your weed supply stays stable. At the very fucking
Crossing
least.
my fingers.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Romeo. Do you have anything you want to plug, kind of as we go out here?
Just if you really want to know about what's going down in Ukraine, I am co-host of a podcast called Ukraine Without Hype. You can find it on any podcast platform. And if you really want to get a look at what's going on in English, with only a tinge of leftist bias, then tune in. You can follow us on Twitter at Hype Ukraine, and again on any podcast platform that you so desire.
Awesome. Well, check out Romeo there. Check out his podcast, and just try to keep your eyes on the situation and don't let yourself be overwhelmed by what some random person on Twitter tries to sum it up as. People are more complicated than that.
And we're live here outside the Perez family home, just waiting for and there they go. Almost on time this morning. Mom is coming out the front door strong with a double-arm kid carry. Looks like Dad has the bags. Daughter is bringing up the rear. Oh, but the diaper bag wasn't closed. Diapers and toys are everywhere. Ooh, but Mom has just nailed the perfect car seat buckle for the toddler. And now the eldest daughter, who looks to be about 9 or 10, has secured herself in the booster seat. Dad zips the bag closed, and they're off. But looks like Mom doesn't realize her coffee cup is still on the roof of the car. And there it goes. Oh, that's a shame. That mug was a fam favorite.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Just nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are buckled correctly in the right seat for their age and size. Learn more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Dua Lipa. I'm here to tell you about my brand new podcast, Dua Lipa at Your Service. I'll be sitting down with the world's most inspiring minds to uncover what makes them tick, what they've learned from their successes, failures, and the obstacles life has thrown at them. We're going deep with people revolutionizing not just their own industries, but also culture more broadly. From Lisa Taddeo, the author redefining what it means to tell women's stories, to the fashion industry virtuoso Olivier Rousteing. You'll even hear me break bread with some of the most iconic and dishiest names in pop culture, like Sir Elton John.
After a lot of upsets, a lot of disappointments, a lot of betrayals, it's turned out to be the most wonderful life right now that I could have ever imagined.
I can't wait to share all of this and more with you. Listen to Dua Lipa at Your Service on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination, our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
It could happen here, coming to you live from my room in Chicago. But importantly, we're coming to you live from It Could Happen Here Central, where the gamers have seized the pod. It is me, Christopher, and it is Garrison. Hello, fellow gamer.
Hello. I'm in the gaming trenches with my Razer headset on, looking into my NVIDIA-powered viewfinder, and I'm ready to continue on the fight.
It's going to be great. We're talking about gaming, we're talking about the military, we're talking about why the two of them crossing is extremely bad. And with us to talk about this are two people who are somewhat less clownish than we are. This is Katie and Chris from Gamers for Peace, which is an initiative of Veterans for Peace. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Hi. Hey, thank you. I take offense at being called less clownish than you guys. I'm just trying to live up to your standard.
I'll have you know, I am very, very clownish and clumsy and all of those good things, and they trusted me with weapons.
Oh, God. So, I guess starting out, I wanted to talk about, I guess, very generally the history of counter-recruitment, because this is something that's been going on in the U.S. military for, I mean, it really is, like, from what I could tell, like, about as long as there's been, you know, recruitment for the military. But I was wondering if we could start, I don't know, maybe around sort of the Vietnam era, when there's, you know, very, very serious and intense sort of left-wing kind of recruitment, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. So coming out of Vietnam, you have Vietnam Veterans Against the War forming, and there's a massive pushback on the draft. The anti-war movement is pretty much at its strongest, and Vietnam Veterans Against the War over time becomes Veteran for Peace. Veterans for Peace has a long legacy of sitting at the front of the anti-war movement, peace movement, participating in nuclear abolition work, counter-recruitment work, de-escalation work out of Save Our VA, helping veterans get assistance with disability benefits and making sure that the traumas that veterans suffer and the communities of impacted by the military suffer are getting treatment for the care. Deported veterans, because Vietnam vets served and then got deported, and that continues to this day. So Veterans for Peace had a multi-pronged approach to the anti-war efforts in 2000s, around 2007-ish. Iraq Veterans Against the War, later known as Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans Against the War, comes along, and that's a new generation of veterans carrying along, built on the legacy of Veterans for Peace and Vietnam Veterans Against the War. You know, there's a long history of coffee shops, GI resistance, outreach, doing work with veterans, trying conscientious objector work, GI resistor work in there. And there's just a long legacy of just veterans sharing their experiences and coming back and really wanting to make sure nobody else goes through that, and making sure that they get the help they need, and kind of slow that beat of the war drum that media seems to always be picking up. And that's where we came in.
That's definitely a good way to put it. Now, especially born out of the pandemic, a lot of the recruiting had to move online. They didn't really have, if they wanted to keep recruiting, they had to go online. And that's where a majority of the newest generation is. They are watching Twitch. Twitch had a viewership like pretty much competing with Netflix streaming as of this summer. And I'm sure that hasn't really changed much. I'm sure it is just as popular. And the audience for Twitch skews very young. So that's really what started to worry members of Veterans for Peace. Like, okay, we might need to ramp up truth and recruitment initiatives, which is what Gamers for Peace came out of. because the thing is, if you're forming a parasocial relationship with these younger kids by streaming and forming those relationships, getting them on Discord and talking to them, you're getting a one-sided view of what military service is about. And you are definitely not getting the imperialist informed viewpoint for sure. So Veterans for Peace kind of came out of that, this like very insidious looking hidden and subtle way of recruiting using the video games that have already historically been used for recruiting purposes. So it's like a double whammy they got on us there.
For those not inundated in the gamer warfare like we are, I think we should briefly describe what Twitch is, because I know a lot of people probably isn't actually aware of Twitch.
And not as aware as we are down in these trenches fighting off the cyber net stuff, the bad metaphor, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, so I guess Twitch is like a live streaming platform that is primarily used for live streaming people playing video games, and people kind of develop their own like brands and like personalities and like parasocial relationships with an audience via them playing these games and kind of adding their commentary. A variety of games, sometimes it's like mostly chatting with people like inside like a group chat while playing a game, or it's more focused on the game itself. It kind of varies, but yeah, it's arguably the biggest live streaming platform. I think it was bought by Amazon a few years ago. And yes, there's a few US like military channels on there that are actually like relatively popular. I guess the other thing to kind of get into for some background is like you mentioned, you already kind of alluded to this, but like the history of the US military using video games for propaganda, because they've been one of like the earliest funders of games for this reason. I think getting into that history is like interesting, and something that some people are definitely aware of, but a lot of times can get overlooked, despite Call of Duty being one of the biggest video game franchises in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. The military's involvement in video game design, using it as recruitment, using it initially at first, it was thought of as a training tool, and they started looking at it for training. If you think back to like early 90s, Doom, the original Doom, had a mod released called the Marine mod. It was a modification designed for the Marine Corps to use to train Marines in as early as the early 90s, when Doom was at its height. And then that grows from there. You have First to Fight. What is it? Game called First to Fight, features Marines in dress blues, where you're tactically fighting a battle in
which you never want to do. If you know anything about the Marine Corps blues, you do not want to be doing anything in those that isn't getting drunk.
Exactly. So. Just drunk and dancing in blues is all they're good for. So you have First to Fight, and then it turns into Call of Duty, America's Army, which thankfully just got pulled down from its platform. That's a huge win. But the Army started getting into the development of video games for training, and then got into it as recruiting. And America's Army is a perfect highlight of that, where they just flat out had recruitment posters and training things in there with links to how to get to recruiters or get more information about joining the military, joining the Army. You have Arma 2. You could argue and draw the line from military training simulators to PUBG Underground, which is one of the biggest battle royale games, which is where you get Fortnite out of. So you can draw these lines straight from the military's involvement in designing training and recruitment materials to what our kids are playing the most these days.
And really, one of the most kind of sick factors of this is like how much games have been designed and pushed towards basically training people for I guess we're trying to think of the term, but like combat at a distance in terms of like drone combat. There's this they started just using Xbox controllers for some like drone missions. It's like they're specifically looking at the pipeline of specifically young males who get into this type of gaming and trying everything they can to push them into a career where they just kill people in overseas countries using the same technology, using video game controllers, using operating systems very similar to what were being used in video games. And I mean, like, in video games are a very effective propaganda tool. If you're thinking, like, okay, I mean, I just enjoy playing war games. It's not, like, what's the big deal? I'm like, sure, like, I also enjoy playing war games sometimes. They can be fun. I like those, like, tactics-based games. But these have been shown to be very effective at recruitment, to the point that video game footage and video games were, like, one of ISIS's favorite recruitment and propaganda tactics as well. Like, it's a thing. Like, it's not just, like, oh, it's fine. Like, no, these things are actually kind of a problem.
Yeah, they are very effective in that manner as a recruiting tool. And there is a real synergy between gaming developers and the DoD because of how effective, that recruiting can be, or that recruiting tool can be. Similar to movies, the military entertainment complex is a term thrown around a lot for good reason. There is a black box of politics whenever you're watching a movie that pits, some sort of power structure against whatever the villain is doing. There's always something there, and video games are not too different from that. You just have a little bit more say in where the story goes, but maybe not even. It depends on the development. But there was an article in the Atlantic it was actually like about a book from, I think it's Dexter Thomas, Warplay. And it's all about video gaming and the relationship with the military. And they said the Pentagon avoids pitiful, expensive efforts to create their own training simulators, and developers get fat government checks. So they can help fund these new games, new virtual reality things under the guise of it being a useful training tool for training in like virtual reality environments, which it scares me already. And then game developers are like, great, I can get a government grant. So even if this flops, we still got the money out of it. That's not an uncommon phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like filmmaking, like there's rules for like Pentagon contracts with film studios to be like, if you want to use, U.S. military equipment or personnel, you need to follow these specific rules to portray the military in this light. Which often do get followed just because people want to use the cool equipment and stuff. I'm still angry that my beloved Transformers got cucked by the U.S. military in all of their films, and as a result, the films are pretty bad. Yeah,
I'll have you know they are film art. No, I'm sorry, I can't even keep it straight.
I hope as someone with many Starscream action figures, I dream of one day of having good Transformers movies.
I mean, you got the 80s classic.
You have the 80s classic. You've got The Touch, and the Bumblebee film was okay, but it's even still that one got cucked by the military pretty severely.
Yes.
It's funny that you mentioned ISIS using video gaming. There's just a recent report came out. It's linked to the UN. I believe it's linked to the UN Council on Counterterrorism or Office of Counterterrorism, talking about violent extremism in gaming, the link between video games and violent extremism. And what's really interesting is it's not so much that the video games themselves are the issue. It's the gaming adjacent spaces. It's the parasocial relationship development. It's the meme, and it's the what we've known in the gaming world for a while as associated with like the behaviors and culture around Gamergate and things like that, where we see this this toxic culture that is easy to cultivate inside these spaces and be co-opted for more nefarious things. And that doesn't mean that the military isn't banking or utilizing those same principles to get its recruiting messages across. The military is another violent extreme position, right? Whether you're the violent arm of capitalism and the state, or a violent like domestic terrorist or something like that, you're still opting into, or your position is still getting mobilized towards potentially doing violence. And these gaming adjacent spaces make it really easy for recruiters of all sorts to be in there and push people to more that side of things.
Yeah, one of the things I remember when I was like a teenager on Twitch was like So I watched just like a lot of Hearthstone streams, right? And this was like these were like completely mainline Hearthstone streams, and there was this artist who everyone called Kebab the German, and so it turns out that Kebab the German was like a shortening like abbreviation of his actual name, which was Remove Kebab, and this guy's stuff was just being played on like every major like Twitch, like all the major Hearthstone streamers were just playing Remove Kebab songs, and it was like, and this was just like what this is just what Twitch was in like 2014, 2015, and yeah, like there's so much like the extent to which just this sort of like, I mean, just overtly fascist like milieu would just seep into just like, here's a bunch of people playing a card game, and like it wasn't even like. I mean, some of these streamers were like really reactionary. Like I've seen TFT streamers who like will like watch videos of like cops doing raids on people's houses on stream. Like so like you have those people who are like really far right, but some of these people were just like, I don't know, they're just
a lot of them are just regular people. Like a lot of them don't consider themselves extremists by any means. Or far right,
but it's just sort of
but
like
they laugh at the
culturally
shock value.
Yeah, well, even then, like some of them just like I think with Kebab the Germans, like they just didn't know, like they just like didn't know what was going on, and so they were just spreading all of this stuff, and it was like it was horrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because about a year ago, the Army Esports channel got in trouble because one of the streamers didn't catch on to there were two usernames that were explicitly white supremacists. One of them was 6 million was not enough.
Yeah.
Real gross. And I guess like just in the whole idea of multitasking between playing a game, trying to interact with chat, and trying to make sure you're on screen and all of those things, they didn't realize it, or they willfully didn't realize it. I don't know which one, and I'm not going to make a judgment either way, but they had to shut down that stream, and I don't think they streamed for a couple of weeks after that. They had to like reassess some things, because they're like, hey, actively, white supremacist people are on your stream. You should probably do something about that.
Yeah, I feel like if you're the U.S. military streaming on Twitch, that someone's job should just be to prevent that from happening. Like,
yeah, but
they have the resources.
Yeah, but it's like they kind of have this problem though, because Twitch has there's a huge just like core, like a large enough base of Twitch users are just like fascist or like hard right wingers that do things like there've been a persistent problem on Twitch for years now of like these hate raids. Yeah. Like people doing mass raids on like anyone who's not white and anyone who's like not a cis white dude, and just like hate raiding their channels and like spamming the chat with like slurs and stuff like that. And when that's and that's to a large extent like those are the people like that's a large enough part of Twitch that like even if you're like taking the most charitable thing, which is that the US, like the Army, is not overtly recruiting white supremacists, which like okay, but like even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, right, like that's a large enough part of just what Twitch is that
absolutely
they have an incentive to turn a blind eye.
And radicalization, specifically right-wing and white nationalist radicalization in the military, is well studied and well established as an existing phenomena. I knew someone personally who got caught trying to smuggle weapons for a neo-Nazi group, and that's all I'll say on that.
Oh boy.
No, it is a thing, and it hits really close. It is definitely a phenomenon that happens in the military, and these paramilitary neo-Nazi groups actively recruit from people coming out of the military because they have the trainings that they want. And I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way to tie this back to recruiting online, but it, like, with all of this in mind, it is very insidious that the target is explicitly young kids. And I'm not saying that just to be like, oh, because we've gotten pushback with saying, well, the military doesn't recruit kids. They can only sign up when they're 17. Like,
no,
first of all, that is a kid.
That is complete bullshit.
Yes,
legally a child.
First of all, that is a kid. Second of all,
it's like the thing is, it's just like grooming children. That's that's what it is. Like
it is.
It's the same process of grooming. That's what's going on.
Yeah, one of my best friends growing up, like this kid was my best friend for like a decade. Like I met him in like first grade. He was my friend for the entirety of school, and then he got like, because his parents sent him away to like one of those like summer like military school camps,
Oh, boy.
and he was just never the same afterwards, and he's like a fascist now. And
Yeah, that's not
it
surprising.
sucks.
Yeah,
Like-
that does suck. That
Yeah.
there's not a better word for that. That sucks.
Because they can't sign up until they're 17, but that's not the point. Isn't to convince 17-year-olds.
Mhm,
The point's
exactly.
the point's to ingrain this idea in them when they're like fucking 12 years old on the internet, and that is just what grooming is, right? Starting it when they're young, so when they're old enough, they will be able to sign up for the thing. Like that's what the process is. And
Yeah.
that's what, military propaganda and recruitment's been doing for a long time. But specifically the way it's being done on the internet around gaming is extra
Yeah.
insidious.
It was literally, it is explicitly said by one of a recruiting officer, Dr. E. Casey Wardinsky, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he literally said, we have to confront this question of, will we wait until they're 17, or will we start talking to them at age 12, 13, 14, 15, when they form the set of things they were thinking about doing with their life. So he's
Exactly.
literally saying, we want to groom children, is what
Yeah.
So I think now would be the time to kind of get into the countering side of things. Is like, yes, this is a big problem, as we've laid out the past 20 minutes. What can we do about it?
Yeah. So what can we do about it? There's a good deal that we can do about it, right? We Veterans for Peace, the Truth in Recruitment working group, came up with an idea for the Gamers for Peace initiative, concerned veterans and gamers and allies, because Veterans for Peace isn't just comprised of veterans themselves; it's also allies and accomplices. Came together and started forming an online community of our own, where we have kind of developed some 4 channels of change. This concept of 4 channels of change. One, do education, talking about sharing our experiences as veterans, talking about and unpacking recruitment tactics and techniques, start talking, being extremely vocal, and raise awareness around the recruitment techniques that we've already been talking about, right? Second, we're doing some mentorship and leadership stuff, starting to develop programs in local communities that offer alternatives to the economic draft, right? Like just throwing it back to where we started talking about coming out of Vietnam, it was already said that Sergeant Hard Times is the best recruiter, and it post the draft. So when we went to an all volunteer force, you have to have a reason to join, and there's a thing called the economic draft, and it's the impoverished conditions that many kids and people face that force them to go into the military. Right? You don't have health care coming out of high school. You're in an abusive home. You're not talking to a guidance counselor. No college is coming to you. You don't know how to pay for college. You don't know what you're going to do because you're 18 and on your own, and that's what we keep telling kids. And so you have the economic draft, which gives an opportunity for recruiters to go, hey, this program will solve everything. And what people don't realize is what's being asked is, are you willing to kill for a Camaro? Are you willing to kill just to have a roof over your head? Are you willing to kill for Medicare? Right. So we're starting to focus on developing mentorship and leadership programs, include helping kids and young adults get into college or find mutual aid programs within their community to start doing stuff locally, because the problem is pervasive. Right. Not everybody needs to escape abusive home and is fine staying in their community, but doesn't know how to survive within the community because they don't have the resources there. And we also look at what's going on in the world today and recognize that things must be done at a local level, and youth can be part of leading that change, right, in addressing some of our world concerns. We ourselves do direct actions. We go to gaming conventions, speak out, try to actually do counter recruitment right where the recruiters are.
Yeah. It's really pervasive. If you go to any kind of con or any kind of like game fest or whatever, Comic Cons, there will always be multiple military recruitment booths there.
Always.
Like Navy, Marines, Army, National Guard, like all of them. They will all be there, and it's not my favorite thing to see.
No,
and it's frustrating.
Yeah. Board games aren't even safe, right? The Army esports team has a 40K team. So if you play Warhammer 40K, they have a nationally or internationally ranked 40K team playing in the major circuits.
You know what's most insulting about that? Sorry, Chris. What's most insulting about that, and I know this because one of the streams that we do, I hosted, is called Ad Slam, because we started out as like roasting military recruitment ads, but it kind of morphed into just like general veteran and military depictions in media. And one of them was on or at least referenced the Army Esports Warhammer 40K team. And you know how people will like take their figurines really seriously? They paint them, they look really cool. The Army like spray painted them gold and called it a day. And I'm like, really? You have all of these resources. You are using the recruiting budget, which is ridiculous and astronomical, and you spray painted them gold? Are you kidding me? Come on. And it's just insulting that it was so low effort, but they still get the praise. A lot of people report like having positive viewpoints of the military after interacting with members of the esports team or the booth or whatever. So I'm genuinely annoyed that it's also low effort on that matter, and they're still getting a positive response. It bothers me.
That's a perfect highlight, because being there on like, I hate using military terms nowadays, but being there boots on ground, at these conventions, providing truth in recruitment, right? Talking about alternatives, really just being there in front of recruiters and talking to the people that they're targeting and family members, letting them know like, hey, we as veterans, right? Don't let this be what shapes your child's future or your future, right? There's other opportunities for you. Whether that's, if you're into gaming, start designing games, right? Like there's so many opportunities within the gaming community that doesn't want to put you into the military pipeline also, right? So it's not the game's fault. It's not like it's a tool that the state's using right now, right? And then we're trying to form our own esports teams also, right? So we can compete directly against them, kick their ass in some of the tournaments that they host. My dream is to see some Gamers for Peace jerseys getting awarded like some trophy next to the Army esports team and just dunking on them. So across all the
even if we lose, if we're up there, we still get to dunk on them. See, we had so much more fun. We don't have to go clean a barracks room after this. Like the ultimate goal being us being able to provide tangible alternatives. So a kid coming out of high school thinking like, well, I either go into a lot of debt to go to college or I join the military. If we can get not a hold of them, that seems predatory, but if we can talk to them, or our organization can provide that alternative and say, oh, well, you don't really have to do that. We have a scholarship program that we can offer you, or we can provide at the very least education about what they're really getting into so they can make a better informed decision. Because the main problem that I have with the way that recruiting works is that you are not getting a view of what life would actually be like. You are not getting a view of what you are fighting for. There's a whole lot of like these vague concepts that they tell you that you're fighting for and that you're supposed to feel great about doing, but none of those are real in practice. Liberty or protecting the homeland, none of that is what you're doing. You're helping Northrop Grumman create a profit, right? Like and so at the very least, someone who thinks that they have no other options, and in this country, that might not be too far off, right? We don't have a universal healthcare system. That was part of the reason why I joined the Marine Corps, is that I knew I would get healthcare and I knew I would get money to go to college and not be in the student loan debt that I was in. So I'm definitely not alone in that. And if maybe we can even just provide a more holistic view of what decision that you're making, that would be considered a win to us. So that was my soapbox.
One of the important things is just trying to push back on the most nefarious things that we're seeing, right? Whether that's games that are becoming way too training simulator. There's another campaign that Gamers for Peace worked on and Veterans for Peace worked on called Deplatform 6 Days with CARE, the Council on American and Islamic Relations, pushing back on a game called 6 Days in Fallujah, which was delayed to Q4 of 2022 of this year. So we got it was pushed by a year, whether through our efforts or for whatever reason, but it was pushed by a year. And this game is dubbed Arab Murder Simulator.
Because it is.
It is. We look at other games like Escape from Tarkov as teaching fundamental skills through tried and true teaching methodologies for military skills. We're talking about counter recruitment and truth in recruitment to give people an opportunity to have an informed decision about their participation in the war machine. But also we're trying to push back directly on the war machine and say, hey, there's better uses of our money for as a government to take care of our people. There's a lot of fundamental things. There's the contributions to the climate crisis is the military is the number one impactor of the on the climate. War is never green. You can't greenwash the military. We have just so much going on around all the ways that people don't realize the military is involved. We have the future of drone warfare, kill cloud technology, gaming technology, and the military and militarism is so tightly wound right now that just pushing back and trying to parse those two things apart is one of the things that is most effective for counter recruitment and also for mobilizing people to be like, hey, we actually deserve better. Like, get out of my gaming space and like get me some food sovereignty. Let me be part of my community. Get out of the gaming space and stop using what is fun and has actual educational value, mental health benefits, physical health benefits, communal impact, social impact. Like this gaming tool, this gaming technology we have can be used for so much good. But we need to disentangle the military's usage from it and stop framing our time and joy that we enjoy with our friends and family through this lens that the military forces us to view it through.
Because there are so many great games out there. Like we are in one of right now we have the most amount of games ever released, most amount of good games always being announced and released all the time. There's so many great stuff to play, and yeah, if anything that can be done to push people away from stuff that kind of promotes this, colonial imperialist kind of mindset is great, right? That's why I kind of appreciate the cartoony aspects of Fortnite, even though I hate playing Fortnite and will never really do so. I still appreciate it as opposed to the heavily militaristic kind of aesthetics that other, similar battle royales show. Because with as many games out there as there is, yeah, I think any kind of attempts to push people away from the more problematic aspects of, specifically shooting games is great.
Yeah.
And just noting that when you're playing these games, especially if they are relatively close to reality, understand the impact that you can have by pointing out simply that your friend doesn't respawn in real life, right? And also, keep in mind, if you are playing a game that is close to a recent reality, that you could be playing through someone's actual trauma. So I'm not telling you not to play the games if they are. We've gone over a couple like Squad and others that are very, very realistic in their application. Just keep in mind when you're playing it that maybe look at it through that lens. How would you feel if you were playing through a game but it was the exact moment of your trauma? And I'm not even saying from the military side. I mean from the people who are being bombed side, So I just want to have more people be more mindful with what they consume and how. And again, I'm not telling you not to consume it. Just telling you to think a little bit about it and what that type of media can do while having that baggage onto it.
And there is a place for vets and the military experience in gaming, right? Like when I was deployed to Iraq, I took an Xbox 360 over there with me in the bottom of my sea bag. And we had on Camp Fallujah, we had a local area network of Xboxes in all the camps. And we sat there and played Halo and Gears of War and when that dropped while I was there, right? It's how we stay in touch with each other. It's how we process auditory things and our combat experiences, right? That's valid. Sublimation and processing of our traumatic experience is a thing. And games have that, and that's not a military exclusive thing or a veteran exclusive thing. That's for all communities. But what we have to do is add context and nuance to when we're playing these games and go, there's another side to this story. That's the local civilian that just had
Hi, this is Joe Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and if you can hear me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Cave in their ceiling, right? There's these instances where we remove that because we're so focused on the competitive nature instead of the storytelling and the full scope of what that game is allowing us to process. And that's why I'm not blaming recruiters or blaming coming up to people in the military and going, you're horrible. It's not the right thing. I was there, right? I did 6 years in the Marine Corps and instead of going, hey, you're a horrible person or things like that, we're trying to offer them the recruiters and other military members a community that go, hey, you're allowed to speak out against the things that are bullshit while you're in there. Because I knew it was bullshit while I was in there and I couldn't speak out. I didn't know I had a community to speak out to or with. And we're trying to offer community to them. And that's beyond just video games, but that's drone operators and infantry guys and people that are just fed up with what they see in a system that is supporting a crumbling infrastructure, right? You can only deploy so many times without developing, either becoming completely dead on the inside or developing some semblance of empathy that goes, hey, deep down, I know something's wrong here, and I just don't know how to, I don't know what that feeling is. Well, that feeling is just empathy for the human condition and not wanting to see people traumatized through war, right? That idea of us going into, like, even post 9/11, like immediate post 9/11 vets early on, they went there with the right idea. I want to defend my community. I want to do service, right? Like, I don't have another option. Yeah, I'm an economic draftee, but all in all, I'm really here to help defend my people.
Yeah, it was a genuine thought. Like, it was a genuine idea, right? You can very much disagree with, like, the intentionality and the propaganda that, like, governments were doing to promote the war and the unjust reasons for that. But for the regular people, right? Yeah, it was genuine feelings that caused that to happen. And overlooking that, I think, misses what makes the recruitment work. Yeah. You know, if you just look at all the people who join the military as being like, oh, they're just like bad people who want to kill, you know, brown people, you're like, you can think that, but that doesn't actually do anything to understand how recruitment actually works. And then if you can't do that, then you don't know how to actually counter it.
Right, exactly. If you are a veteran and you feel like we do, this whole thing was bullshit, and that can be an incredibly alienating experience. I've been there. Because it feels like with the amount of veterans we saw at the January 6th events, all the veterans that you see that get through to the right-wing side of the culture war, just want to say that we see you. You're not alone. You are not crazy. I promise you. We are trying to build a community of people like that who understand it and promote healing through that community, political education through that, so that you can create resiliency within your community, and as well as at least put a little bit of pressure on the military entertainment complex and the military recruiting apparatus.
Yeah, fuck the military.
Fuck war.
Fuck war.
Yep.
It's truth.
All right, do you two have anything specific that you want to plug?
Yes, join our Discord. You can find, if you search the Discord, you can look up Gamers for Peace and you will see us. On Twitch, we are Veterans for Peace, all one word, and we stream several times a week gaming content about different alternatives to military service, content breaking down propaganda and recruiting efforts, as well as other political education things. Sometimes it's just a random community game night as well. Actually, no, that's not random. Those are on Thursdays. So go ahead, watch us there. Chris, should we add anything?
I got something. If one of the first things you can do besides going to Discord and checking us out on Twitch, we actually have an online digital direct action campaign going on that we're pushing to allow content creators on Twitch as a platform to be able to opt out of military ads on their channels. So that is our campaign that we currently have ongoing. There's a petition. It is bit.ly/Twitch military ad opt out. Is the URL. That'll take you right to the Twitch petition that feedback through Twitch. We're looking to hit 1,000 at least ASAP on that petition to get a response from Twitch, and then go from there, allowing content creators to take ownership of the ads and stuff that are on their channels, at least when it comes to military recruitment, and then going from there. We also are doing actions and planning things constantly. So be on the lookout, join the Discord, all that good stuff.
Oh, if you need help navigating that, I'm a mod in the Discord at Plantifa, she/they, and you'll find me.
We'll try to put that link for the petition in the show notes so people can find that with an easy click.
Awesome.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you two for joining us. We are It Could Happen Here at Happened Here Pod in the places.
The places, you know?
All
those
the
places. They're all there.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and go play, I don't know, Mario Kart 8 or something. You know, something fun. I don't know. I enjoy the Mario Kart games as someone of my age. Very, very, very integral to my driving education. So yeah. Go play Mario Kart 8.
Fuck war.
Fuck war.
Fuck war.
Not another generation.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Dutton.
And I'm Elizabeth Dutton. Oh, wait, sorry.
Zarin, do you want to say your name?
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
We're the hosts of Ridiculous Crime. People love true crime, right? The mystery, the intrigue, the human frailty.
Totally.
But what a lot of us don't like is the blood and the guts and the mayhem.
Wait. Some of us do like the mayhem.
Okay, but let's be real. There's nothing funny about murder.
Okay, that's right.
Our show gives you stories like the kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. and the Max Headroom signal hijacking.
Oh, so you mean ridiculous stories like the UK cat shaver and Pablo Escobar's cocaine hippos?
Yeah, stories like the dudes who stole Buzzy, the animatronic whatever he was, from Disney World, and the woman whose husband tried to kill her but came back from the dead and surprised him at her own funeral.
Yeah, that does sound good.
You can find this new podcast, Ridiculous Crime, all over the place. The iHeartRadio app, the Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I don't know how you live.
Ridiculous Crime.
Hello and welcome to our show. I'm Zoe Deschanel, and I'm so excited to be joined by my friends and castmates, Hannah Simone and Lamorne Morris, to recap our hit television series, New Girl.
Join us every Monday on the Welcome to Our Show podcast, where we'll share behind-the-scenes stories of your favorite New Girl episodes, reveal the truth behind the legendary game True American, and discuss how the show got made with the writers, guest stars, and directors who made the show so special.
Fans have been begging us to do a New Girl recap for years, and we finally made a podcast where we answer all your burning questions like, is there really a bear in every episode of New Girl? Plus, each week you'll hear hilarious stories like this.
At the end, when he says you got some Schmidt on your face, I feel like I pitched that joke.
I believe that.
I feel like I did. I'm not 1,000%. I want to say that was, I tossed that one out.
Listen to the Welcome to Our Show podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh boy, it could happen here. Is the podcast that you're listening to. All right, St. Andrew, that's my job done today. Why don't you take over?
Good job. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful episode of It Could Happen Here.
Mm-hmm.
Today, hoping to take a look at another book. Well, two books this time. This time, works of fiction. And this time by an English, unfortunately, writer named Aldous Huxley. Right? We'll be looking at Island and Brave New World. The sort of twins of speculative science fiction, I would say. Aldous Huxley was, like I said, an English writer and philosopher, and he actually wrote a lot of books, 50 in his lifetime, to be precise. He was also a French teacher who, interestingly enough, taught George Orwell. But
I did not know that.
Yeah. But from what his past students have said, he wasn't a particularly good teacher.
Okay.
But he was a good speaker. He was also a very, very big fan of psychedelics and, and mysticism and philosophy, and particularly like Advaita, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Advaita Vedanta, which is like a Hindu spiritual practice.
Yeah, I know he's even referenced a lot in like occultist and chaos magic books written like post the 60s. He's He's like that guy. Yeah.
What's like his name again? Alan Watts. He's like
Watts
kind of guy.
Yeah.
Also, very interestingly, Huxley actually had LSD injected into his veins on his deathbed.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he was like he was dying, as you know one does on their deathbed.
Sure,
and
that is the traditional thing to do.
Traditionally, yes. But while in the process of dying, because he had like advanced laryngeal cancer, he had to write to his wife Laura. He was just like LSD 100 intramuscular, and she's like okay,
hell
she
yeah,
injects him,
hell yeah,
and she doesn't inject him
fucking muscles, yes,
and she doesn't inject him with one dose, she injects him with 2 doses,
Damn
and
right
then
she
he
does.
dies like several hours later.
Incredibly based.
What a way to go.
Staggeringly based.
And honestly, if he was like speaking on his deathbed, I would really love to know like what that experience was like. Like, are you just like dancing through hell? Like, what's going on?
I mean,
I can see it being the most amazing thing and also extremely
most
bizarre
terrifying
and slightly terrifying. Right?
As a general rule, when like they've done studies on like giving different kinds of psychedelics, usually psilocybin mushrooms to
like cancer patients,
people
and
who are on
terminal
hospice,
illnesses.
and it generally reduces their fear of death.
Yeah,
they go in peace.
Yeah, it just makes them like, you know what? Everything is the same as everything else, and we're the imagination of the universe. I'm gonna go back into space.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Good for them.
Yeah, good for them. Good for them. If I were on my deathbed, I probably wouldn't want to be thinking about death either. So, yeah. I mean, that assumes that, you know, we get a deathbed, you know, and that's the kind of the wild thing about death. You don't know when it's going to happen. But to return to the topic of discussion, Brave New World and Ireland, right? To summarize the plots of both, I guess I'll start with Brave New World. It is the more famous of the two. I don't think a lot of people have heard of Ireland compared to Brave New World. Because I mean, Brave New World is like
New World in high school, but I have not read Island.
Exactly, and it's like it really says a lot about society that we read about the dystopias, but not the utopias. But anyway, Brave New World, you know, it's really up there with like 1984 in terms of you know, its notoriety. It is like one of the quintessential dystopias. It's set like several hundred years into the future. Like, unlike 1984, which, you know, took place in 1984, which is several decades ago, Brave New World was set in 2540 CE. So
yeah, we're roughly
several hundred
in
years
Star
from now.
Trek times. Yeah.
But however, in the book, it isn't called 2554 CE. It's called 632 AF. AF standing for After Ford, because in this world, and I'm sure we'll get into this a bit, Henry Ford, the assembly line guy, the Model T guy, he is basically God. He
That's
is the
not
god
great.
of their world, you know. So
that wouldn't be ideal.
They say things like by Ford's name and that kind of thing, you know. And his whole sort of assembly line structure is basically extrapolated to society as a whole, right? There's this world state where emotions and individuality are conditioned out of children, and everyone belongs to everyone else, and you know, there's children are created in like factories and generated to be part of specific classes, whether it be alpha, beta, gamma, delta, or epsilon. So it's like it's kind of like what's happening today, you know, in terms of the Greek alphabet. We have the alphas who are bred to be like the leaders and stuff, and you have the epsilons who are bred to be like the menial laborers. And you have the folks in between. And like they are literally conditioned, you know. So like in the factory, in the baby making factory, which is in this case literal and not a euphemism for the womb, you know, they like hold back on oxygen, or they apply certain chemicals or certain hormones in order to like condition people. So they don't do like genetic like coding or whatever. They do chemical concoctions in those sort of test tubes. And yeah, I mean, the story of the world is really how it's affecting like some of the top level people within it, and sort of contrasted with the sort of reservations that exist in their world where people are a bit less restricted. And it ends pretty tragically, but the next book also ends a bit tragically. The next book being Island, which is like the utopian twin for Brave New World in a lot of ways, in terms of mirroring a lot of the same themes that Brave New World explores, right? So in Ireland, there's this specific island called Pala, which is fictional. I mean, there was an area in India called Pala, but the island of Pala in this world is like, it doesn't exist, right? And it's basically seen as this oasis of happiness and freedom, and where its inhabitants have resisted capitalism and consumerism and technology, right? Then this journalist, another British guy named Will Farnaby, pulls up on their island, and he's basically trying to scope out the island for exploitation because he's friends with this industrialist who's trying to like extract oil from the region. And while he's going through the island and really going through the society, going through the book, there are a lot of monologues and stuff. I mean, this book is kind of heavy on like the monologues and the discussions. It's kind of like Aldous Huxley's soapbox for all his ideas, just laying them all out there, right? So Will enters Pala as a cynic, but by the time he comes out, he's had like layers on layers of epiphanies. And I don't know, for those who have been reading Dawn of Everything recently, in chapter 2, the authors David Wenger and David Graeber, they sort of outline some of the discussions that were happening between Europeans and Indigenous Americans at the time of arrival, and how those discussions were shaping both, but primarily the Europeans' view of society. Interestingly, it's kind of like reflected here because, you know, I have this white man who pulls up with all his English ideas, and it's basically these indigenous inhabitants in Pala basically deconstructing his ideas through dialogue, and through debate and discussion. And unfortunately, it doesn't end very well, despite, you know, being convinced of the purity and brilliance of the Palanese way of living. He already made the deal with the industrialist, and Pala has basically been sold by a neighboring country, and so its downfall is now sadly inevitable. And that's how it ends. Oh, and also Will Farnaby kind of has like an LSD. Well, it's not really LSD, but it's like a psychedelic trip.
Yeah, it's like a combination of like
Near the
mescaline
end.
and psilocybin almost.
Yeah, but in true Aldous Huxley fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a lot of the tropes and like themes that were present in Brave New World exist in Island, but as like their inversion. So like in terms of like it show like Brave New World was written before Huxley had psychedelics. It was so, like his version of drug use is so different in that book 'cause it's more like a pacifying drug, whereas the drug use in Island is more like an enlightening drug. So like, but there's like a whole bunch of themes that like parallel but are also inverted on each other.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to get into those themes just now. But to summarize, Brave New World is basically humans becoming less than human because of all these technological and sociological efforts, whereas Island is like the opposite, where it's, you know, humans are able to come into the fullness of their humanness, while still using science, except in a way to enhance their quality of life. I don't know if I missed any aspect of either plots that any of you want to like touch on real quick.
No, not really. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the one thing that's interesting is because Brave New World also has this sort of like weird, like going to a reservation plot that's like kind of a B plot, but you see sort of it's another one of those things that's kind of like, I don't know if inverted's the right word, but the sort of context of it is very, very different in Island than it is in Brave New World.
Yeah, because I mean, in a sense, you have this outsider protagonist who is introduced to this alternate way of living, and is transformed by it, you know. Except in Brave New World, he ends up killing himself. And in Island, well, he already sold out the island, I will say one criticism that I want to get out of the way before we get into like the concepts and how they might apply to politics as a whole really is Huxley, like a lot of authors and thinkers and ideologues of his time, has this very unsettling fixation on overpopulation. It's kind of like what we were talking about with the last book we discussed here. This sort of weird fixation on overpopulation and people dying out and that kind of thing. In Parla and in Ireland, there's a sort of acceptance of overpopulation as something that needs to be, avoided. And so I guess it brings us to the first theme, which is the use of contraception in both books, right? Like, on one hand, you have in Brave New World where there's like mandatory contraception and people are literally not allowed to like naturally give birth. They have to have babies through test tube. Whereas in Parla, there's reproductive education and reproductive choice and expressive sex, and it's really like a complete contrast. So I guess I want to do something like I like speculating and thinking about how anarchy would operate. I think there needs to be a lot more of that in terms of creative works and discussions. I mean, like, there was At the Cafe by Malatesta, and there are some like utopian fictions out there, but and like less than utopian, but still interesting explorations of anarchist societies, like Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed.
It is interesting to me that even in mainstream sort of imagining, whenever there's an attempt to envision a utopia, there's nearly always a lot of anarchist principles involved in that. Like it's basically impossible to imagine a utopia without aspects of anarchist theory making it into it.
Exactly. Like, there tends to be like some elements of anti-work in there, and like like youth liberation.
We want to be post-work. We want to be post-hierarchy.
Freedom of association. Yeah, there's a
yeah. And so I kind of want to look at these works through that lens as well here. Mostly Island, considering Island is a bit closer to anarchy than Brave New World is.
Yeah, I'd say so.
just a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. Like, when you look at how sexual liberation is treated in Ireland, it is pretty much an echo of what anarchists were saying about free love in like the early 20th and like late 19th century.
Yeah.
Particularly like Emma Goldman. Like free choice and contraceptive access and that sort of thing. Reproductive choice. Free love. It's really in Parla, I would say. They have this sort of element as well of like communal child rearing. I mean, in which is another thing. I spoke about that in like my video in December on the family. Like the fact that humans basically evolved in an alloparental arrangement, in a cooperative breeding arrangement.
Yeah,
because of capitalism, we've moved away from that.
Yeah, there's a lot of if you study how kind of different societies that were not capitalist handled child rearing. There's a lot of like very interesting. I think my favorite is it was some indigenous group in South America whose like cultural belief was that you didn't have like one man have sex with a woman and that like leads the conceiving of a child. It starts the process, and so once you've started the process of making a child, the woman then is going to pick out all of the guys that she thinks have traits that she wants to be like part of the child she's making and has sex with them, because you're like gradually building the child by having like adding additional sperm to it.
That
which means that when they have the kid, all of those guys that she had sex
Are
with while
involved.
pregnant have
Exactly.
a responsibility to rear the child and teach it things, which I think is objectively the best way to treat kids.
I mean, even on like
Yeah.
that's such an interesting metaphysical concept in terms of like what constitutes like even like the idea of genetic makeup, because even though it's not like literally true, it still is like if you can convince yourself of that in your head, then it
Yeah.
kind of is physically true.
And it will be true enough for the kid because like really
because
most
if
of
they're
what's gonna
raised
matter
by
is, like,
all these different fathers,
because we
you
all
and taught things.
they,
and all
yeah,
you're looking for
exactly,
is
and those
pattern-
fathers' traits are gonna like
Yeah.
manifest in the child anyway because they were raised by them. Therefore, it's
I
like
think
a
we should all
self-fulfilling
agree
kind of
to
thing.
just act like it works that way.
Yeah. But I mean, like, and also, like, in terms of, like, the group living in Island versus, like, Brave New World. Brave New World, it's always, like, you have group living because you've lost, like, the idea of individuality, right? Versus group
Yeah.
living in Island is more, like, you know, how, like, anarchists have, like, group homes. And, like, it's very similar to
Group living allows you to be the best version of yourself because the best version of yourself exists in a community.
Yeah, exactly.
As
Yes,
opposed to
there's
being
like
a barista or whatever.
There's
Yeah.
a kind of like a jokey version of this I think about a lot, where it's like if you see a block and like you're looking at a black block, right? It's like the way you can tell that there are Maoists involved is if you see a bunch of people actually like legitimately wearing all the same thing. It's like it's really like it's extremely rare that like even when you're doing this for security reasons that you can get a bunch of anarchists to actually literally all wear exactly the same thing, because it's like yeah, you have this sort of like, I mean, okay, this is not like always true, but like it's I don't know, you have this thing where even when you're like, even when anarchists are like trying to sort of like fade into a single mass, it's like we like you literally can't do it because everyone has this sort of like this individualist streak.
I've
that is
definitely
so
seen
strong.
people be bad at block more often than I've seen them be good at it.
Yeah, it's like I don't
By
know.
which I mean like the actual hiding part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like it's like it's there's a way of sort of egalitarianism in sociality where like you treat everyone as if they were exactly the same, and like and you know, and there's models of this where it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, you actually try to like force everyone to be exactly the same, or like everyone to be exactly the same in the class, and like that sucks, and you shouldn't do it. And the alternative to that is everyone is just sort of like in a group, but they're all like, I'm not entirely sure if this would make any sense, but it's, I don't know.
I mean,
There
it's like
there
the
are ways you can
individuals
have
within a group thing.
Yeah, it's like the purpose of the group is to like maintain, like, you know, maintain the differentiation of the individual.
Yeah, to foster what makes individuals
Yeah.
really good at being like their own person and give them the tools that you can set that up. Yeah.
And I think
Exactly.
I don't, like culturally we have like problems thinking about that because like the sort of American version of individuality has to do with like, no, you're an individual because you have no connections to anyone else, and it's like, well, this sucks. It is bad.
Yeah, because, and that kind of goes back to the whole sperm building a baby concept, right? I didn't think I would ever use that phrase, but in the sense that individuals, only individuals, because their combination of influences are unique to them.
Yeah.
Well, not just that. I mean, obviously, there's a genetic component, and I'll know all that. But I think a key aspect of it is that, you know, because we are raised in these different environments, surrounded by different people, we have different experiences. That's what builds us up.
Yes.
You know, like I can already name off the top of my head like a bunch of like defining moments from my childhood. You know, that basically changed my course. You know, like the one time I got cyberbullied, and that basically like shifted my perspective and my approach to the internet and that kind of thing. You know, it's like I really can't imagine how someone could come away with the idea that an individual is just an individual on their own.
Yeah, they just pop out and are that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because like a large portion of you is built up of previous you and previous like your previous existence is what makes a large portion of yourself. And like, sure, you can say you have a little bit of like ego from the start, like your actual self that contributed to the way you interpret events, which then will in turn build your personality. But I think these things are not opposing; these things work in tandem.
But yeah. So there's like the whole group living component, and also in that group living component, you notice at one point in the book, one of the children, like basically in passing, mentions that they don't want to go by a certain person because they're mad at them or whatever, and so they basically have that freedom to remove themselves from that situation and go and sleep at another house or another space until that sort of situation is resolved. And I think that also would really be a crucial element of anarchist society, particularly for children, having that freedom of association and freedom of movement. Because imagine how many abusive situations could be avoided or remedied if children had the ability to come out of it, We strip children of choice, and that's what allows these sorts of dynamics to persist.
Yeah.
Which
the
then leads to
idea that-
dynamics that persist in the next generation, and so on and so on.
It's this thing that's having a resurgence in the United States right now and is like at the core of all of the book banning and the anti-trans legislation, which is this idea that like kids shouldn't have a choice because that would interfere with parents having absolute control over the life of their child. And that includes the control to like, if a child says, I'm this or I'm that, the parent can say, absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
if you had like this, if you sort of like told like someone from the past, or someone who lives in like a cooperative reading arrangement, that the child is the parent's property entirely, they would look at you like real funny because the child is part of the community. It doesn't belong to anyone. If it belongs to anything, it just belongs to the community as a whole.
Yeah, as we all do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another element I think I find really interesting in the way that Palanese society operates is that, and I guess in comparison to Brave New World, unlike in Brave New World where drugs are used like I was saying, like how drugs are used for pacification and control and self-medication and that kind of thing, to sort of like chill you out and prevent you from basically going mad in a mad society. In Pala, drug use is used for bonding and for enlightenment and for social connection and social cohesion. And
it is really interesting that he changes what drugs do in his books, like after he starts doing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I actually don't know, I used to have, because I had the opposite arc with drugs where I started doing them when I was very young and had the belief that like they were kind of inherently this mind-opening tool that could be used to expand the borders of reality within human beings. And as an adult, in part through some of the research I've done on the far right, come to understand that like, no, you can also use them to reinforce the very limited, terrible things you already believe.
Yeah.
And there are folks who do that quite effectively.
It's like that sort of paleo esotericism kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know if I just made up that term.
No, I like that term.
I
was thinking of like
it's an accurate term to describe the thing we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm taking it.
Okay, but yeah. I mean that is absolutely correct because like those sort of psychedelic substances and stuff. Yeah, they can open your mind, but they are ultimately drawing from your mind.
Yeah,
and drawing from your past experiences and beliefs in some capacity.
The way I always describe it is that like psychedelics are an accelerant to the fire that you've already built, and they can make it flare up, and it can be really cool and awesome, and it can flare up and be utterly terrifying and be like, oh no. But it's always kind of amplifying the things that you've already built through like the kindling of yourself.
Yeah. Psychedelics do not create things within you, but they can lead you to realize things you wouldn't already realize, or they can lead you to reinforce things that you're already doing, and it kind of depends on what you go into it with. It's like, Leary said, I think it was Leary, the set, setting, and dose, and like your mindset is one of the most important things for what's actually going to happen when you take psychedelics.
Yeah.
And if you're a Nazi, you can get better
If
at being a Nazi
and
from taking acid.
if you're a Nazi, you're gonna see Hitler pull up on you like, "Yes, my son, continue the good work."
That's the thing a lot of people don't understand. When I've tried to talk to people who are like really obviously like pro psychedelics, and like, yeah, they're so like freeing, they make you think about new ways, and then I explain to them there's like, well, again, this isn't an easy segue, but if somehow the conversation goes to the point of me talking about all the Nazis who do psychedelics and then like do like weird esoteric rituals while doing like psychedelic drugs, it can like confuse these people because they're like, how could you be a Nazi while you're in that mindset? And I'm like, well, it's actually for all these reasons that we've discussed. It can actually assist within that like fantastical genocidal conspiratorial thinking. It can really give that a lot of credence in someone's brain.
Because especially if you've spoken to someone who has taken psychedelics and have had a specific kind of experience, you can't talk them out of that experience.
Yeah.
As far as they're concerned, that is solidified in their mind. This is reality. I just had a glimpse at reality, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of those like if you want an illustration of how psychedelics do not work the way some people claim, just make a note of the fact that at every street fight between fascists and anti-fascists in Portland, both sides, every single person had fucking weed on them. Like the fucking the far right like smoking pot as much as everybody else. They just also do cocaine.
Yeah.
Whereas Antifa does ketamine. Yeah.
Yeah, Antifa does ketamine. The Proud Boys do cocaine,
and they both have weed.
Everybody's got joints. Yeah.
And both people and people on both sides have dropped acid and taken shrooms.
Yeah, I can say this from a point of journalistic certainty because during one of the rallies where there was a permitted event at the federal park, the police were there and telling people they could not take weed onto the federal park because it was federally illegal. And both sides, people were like, all right, shit. Like turning back because they couldn't walk on with the weed in their pockets.
That's going to open up a whole kind of room to me because I don't know if you all saw this tweet I put out recently. Like, there's still this resistance to drugs and particularly to like cannabis. And you would think that, after decades of research and decades of understanding and really not even decades, it's centuries of its use in various, religious and spiritual practices, that by now, in a post-colonial country, we'd reach the point where, we let it go and we decriminalize it. But although we're kind of in the process of it, we still have this situation where the police are like constantly burning down like fields of cannabis. Like they pull up and they're like, we just seized and burned down like $1 million worth of cannabis.
Yeah.
And arrested this, that, and the other. It's like, why are we still at this point where basic like plants and herbs and medicines and whatnot are still facing this stigma? It's not grounded in any sort of reality or logic. It's just colonial era prejudice. But that was a brief aside.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I have much left to say about Ireland and Brave New World.
Well, listeners, go home, put on some Hitler speeches, drop some acid, and see where it takes you.
Absolutely not. That is the worst idea. Do not do that. Go to the woods. Go do basically literally anything else besides that specific thing. It's that specific thing that is
different people can disagree.
No, like that is like one of the worst things to do to your own brain and psyche. Absolutely not.
Yeah, just do whatever, guys.
Literally anything else. Watch Star Trek. I'd put on Off the Air.
I've watched a lot of Star Trek while tripping.
See, there's so many better things to do than that thing you said.
Mm-hmm. Go watch the movie Conspiracy starring Kenneth Branagh.
See, that
take
could
a shitload of mescaline.
That could be funny.
I don't even know what mescaline is.
Neither.
Instructions
mescaline.
do not compute.
If acid made time different.
What?
Yeah, that's kind of mescaline.
I mean, mescaline's like the active thing inside peyote.
Yeah. Mescaline is a psychedelic, the most intense time dilation I've ever experienced, where like you will feel like weeks have passed and it's been like 7 hours.
What?
It's pretty dope. Matt, I definitely recommend mescaline. Everybody go take mescaline.
I don't even know where I would get that.
Well, if you there is a way to get the cacti, which are legal pretty much everywhere because they're just cactuses and a lot of people use them decoratively, and then using a what do you call it? A pressure cooker. You can get the mescaline out of the cacti. I've known people who have done it. I have not personally done it. Obviously, that would
be a crime. Yeah, would be
criminal.
We would never advocate that.
Yeah, but there are ways that like a person with minimal resources can get mescaline out of the right cactus, and people have done it. You know,
so there's
criminals have done it. Bad people.
There's this thing called Tor.
Yes, because obviously criminality is morality. You know?
Anyway, yeah.
All right, St. Andrew. That was awesome. I'm gonna go read Island now.
It's a good
enjoyed
book.
Brave New World, and I haven't read this.
I would recommend.
I am kind of bummed. I guess at the end of this, I am kind of bummed that as imaginative of a guy as he was, this
was his final book
story,
too.
Well, and his utopian story had to end with it being crushed essentially by industrial capitalism.
Expansion, yeah, and like co-option. I mean, like it is interesting. Like, yeah, this was his final book. This was like his like send off, in a way.
There's an interesting component of it though, right? Because like in Ireland, yeah, it's like a utopian society, but there is a king, and a queen mother, but not. They don't have like the kind of power that we would typically bestow upon kings and queen mothers.
Yeah,
they're still able to destroy the society ultimately by collaborating with the military dictator neighbor and the industrialist oil guy. But I mean, they are not really that involved in the day-to-day run-ins of their society. Like Pala would be the same with or without them. And interestingly, the reason they were taking part in the destruction of Palanese society is because they were educated in Europe by Christians and then went back to Pala.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's kind of playing with, it sounds like, the same thing Tolkien was. Because like J.R.R. Tolkien, at the end of his life, kind of identified himself as like this weird sort of monarchist anarchist where he wanted there to be, he thought the ideal society was one in which people, there was people could not exercise power over each other, but there was a little hierarchy, and that you had a king who couldn't actually do anything, whose purpose was to act as a figurehead. And I don't entirely get what he was going through here. He wrote a lot on the subject himself, and it's interesting that Huxley's kind of playing with the same idea, but is obviously being like, well, this is a bad idea. It could only work for so long. Yada yada. I don't know. I find that compelling. Again, I want to read this, and that's something I may dig into more. Is kind of like how Tolkien conceived of the ideal sort of monarchy versus how Huxley was thinking about it. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for us here at It Could Happen here. Garrison?
Tor.com. No,
sponsored by Tor.com.
No, just drop some acid and Google Hitler.
Okay, again, seriously, don't
literally do anything else.
Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
The woods are lovely. The beach is magnificent. Talk to the ocean. It's so much better.
Go up a mountain.
Go up a mountain.
Unless you have
like you could go and role play as Moana or something.
Yeah. Go to a Comic Con. Literally anything. My suggestions.
I will talk about that experience at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that is the show.
Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find sources for It Could Happen Here updated monthly at coolzonemedia.com/sources. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, last year I published my first novel, After the Revolution, as an ebook and as a podcast series. Well, now it's coming out as a paperback book through AK Press. And if you just Google AK Press After the Revolution, you will be taken to the page where you can pre-order it and get a signed copy now. So please go to AK Press After the Revolution and find my book, pre-order it, and I will love 100% of you who do that. So thanks.
Look through your children's eyes, and you will discover the true magic of a forest.
Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Have you ever wanted to learn about cryptocurrency but don't know where to start? Well, the Coin Bureau podcast is here to help. My name is Guy, I'm the host of the biggest crypto channel on YouTube, and I've persuaded my old friend Mike to sit down and talk crypto with me. Together, we're going to explore this crazy world right from the beginning. Sound good, Mike?
Sounds great, Guy.
Listen to the Coin Bureau podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit. The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.